Hello guys, welcome to Pika Fiction. So in this video, we will see what if Ash defeated Cynthia and Dawn and Zoey demanded to share the new champion. If you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to show us some love by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support means the world to us. Now, let's start the story. Chapter 1, The Throne of Spears. The air tasted like ozone and copper. It was the taste of a storm that had burned itself out, leaving nothing but scorched earth and ringing silence. Ash Ketchum stood amidst the ruin of the Lily of the Valley mainline stadium. The ground beneath his boots was glass, sand superheated by fire and lightning until it had fused into a jagged, obsidian mirror. 60 feet away, the dust was finally beginning to settle, swirling in the updrafts of heat that still rose from the crater. In the center of that crater lay Garchomp. The dragon type, a creature of nightmare and legend, the beast that had held the Sinnoh region in a chokehold of supremacy for a decade, was motionless. Ash didn't cheer. He didn't throw his hat in the air. His lungs burned with every inhalation, his ribs screaming from the sympathetic impact of the battle. He felt the phantom weight of Charizard's exhaustion pressing down on his own shoulders. The bond, that terrifying, beautiful tether that linked his soul to his partner's, was slowly dimming, receding like a tide, leaving him shivering in the sudden cold of reality. Charizard stood over the fallen champion, his wings tattered, flame tail burning low and blue. The dragon looked back at Ash, a singular, golden eye narrowing. "Done," the look said. "It is done." Then, the sound hit him. It wasn't a roar. It was a physical force. 80,000 people screaming at once, a wall of noise that slammed into Ash's chest. The announcer was shrieking something unintelligible, his voice cracking over the PA system. Confetti cannons fired, choking the air with glittering plastic. Ash felt a wave of nausea. He raised a hand, not in victory, but to shield his eyes from the blinding spotlights that swung down to pin him against the darkness. "Ash Ketchum." The referee's voice cut through the din, amplified by the floating drone hovering between them. "Garchomp is unable to battle. The winner, and the new champion of the Sinnoh League, is Ash Ketchum." He had done it. He had climbed the mountain that broke men. He had dethroned Cynthia. And all he wanted to do was sleep for 1,000 years. He recalled Charizard, the red beam of light swallowing the dragon. He whispered a thanks that got lost in the noise. Across the field, Cynthia was recalling Garchomp. She looked immaculate, even in defeat. Her black coat was dusted with ash, her blonde hair wind-whipped, but she stood tall. She walked toward him, her heels clicking on the shattered concrete. The cameras zoomed in, hungry for the transfer of power. They wanted tears, they wanted a speech. Cynthia stopped a foot away from him. Up close, Ash could see the fine lines of exhaustion around her gray eyes. She didn't smile. She looked at him with a terrifying intensity, as if she were seeing him for the first time, not as a challenger, but as a successor. "You have no idea what you've just done," she said softly. Her voice wasn't bitter. It was apologetic. "I won," Ash croaked. His throat felt like he'd swallowed gravel. "Yes," Cynthia agreed. She reached out, gripping his hand. Her skin was cool. "You won the battle. But you've just lost your life, Ash. Forgive me for what comes next." She raised his hand high, signaling the crowd. The noise redoubled, a frenzied worship. But Ash felt a chill crawl down his spine, colder than the wind off M coronet. The locker room was a bunker. Thick concrete walls, fluorescent lights that hummed with a headache-inducing frequency, and the smell of industrial disinfectant. Ash sat on the wooden bench, his head in his hands. He had stripped off his jacket and gloves, tossing them into a pile in the corner. His shirt was stuck to his back with sweat. Pikachu was curled up next to him on the bench, asleep. The little electric mouse had taken a heavy hit from a Milo tick earlier in the match and had nothing left to give. Outside the heavy steel door, the world was trying to break in. He could hear them, the press, the sponsors, the league officials. They pounded on the door like zombies, shouting his name. Mr. Ketchum. A word on your strategy. Ash. The Sylph Company representative is here to discuss your endorsement. Open the door, kid, we have a schedule. Ash stared at the floor. His hands were shaking. It was an adrenaline crash, massive and unforgiving. He needed a doctor. He needed food. Mostly, he needed silence. The lock on the door clicked. Ash's head snapped up, his muscles tensing. If it was a reporter, he was going to electrocute them. The door cracked open, and a sliver of light cut through the room. But it wasn't a cameraman. Dawn slipped inside, followed closely by Zoey. Dawn turned immediately and threw the deadbolt, then jammed a steel chair under the handle for good measure. Zoey leaned against the door, listening to the pounding on the other side. She looked tired, her red hair pulled back in a severe, messy knot, wearing a nondescript black hoodie over her contest gear. Dawn turned to face him. She looked different. The bubbly, frantic energy of the coordinator he had traveled with years ago was gone. In its place was a poised, terrifying calm. She wore a white dress coat, pristine despite the chaos outside, and her blue eyes were sharp, calculating. You look like hell, Ash, Zoey said, her voice low. Good to see you too, Zoey, Ash rasped. He leaned back against the locker, closing his eyes. Can you get me out of here? Use an abra. Anything. Teleportation is blocked, Dawn said, walking over to him. She didn't ask permission. She reached out, placing a hand on his forehead, checking his temperature, then checked the pulse at his neck. Her touch was professional, clinical, yet possessed a familiarity that made Ash's breath hitch. The stadium has a dampening field up to prevent unauthorized entry or exit. They have you trapped, Ash. They want their pound of flesh, Zoey added, pushing off the door. She moved with a predator's grace, circling the room, checking the vents, the corners. You just upset the natural order of the global economy. Cynthia wasn't just a champion, she was an institution. You breaking her streak, stocks are crashing, Ash. Betting syndicates are losing billions. Ash opened his eyes. I just wanted to battle. That's the problem, Dawn said softly. She sat next to him on the bench, hip to hip. She didn't pull away. You think this is just about Pokemon? You think you can just win and walk away to the next town? I can, Ash said, though his voice lacked conviction. No, Zoey said. She stopped in front of him, crossing her arms. She looked down at him, her expression unreadable. You can't. You're the monarch now. You're a king. And kings don't get to walk away. Ash looked between them. There was a tension in the room that had nothing to do with the battle outside. It was thick, heavy, and smelled like ozone. He realized suddenly that they hadn't come here just to congratulate him. What are you doing here? Ash asked, sitting up straighter. Really? Dawn and Zoey exchanged a look. It was a conversation held in a microsecond, a shared understanding that had clearly been debated for nights before this moment. Dawn turned back to him. Her hand moved from his neck to rest flat against his chest, over his heart. We're here to save you, she said. Because if you walk out that door alone, they will eat you alive. The sponsors will bind you in contracts you can't read. The politicians will use your image to pass laws you don't understand. You'll be a puppet within a year. I don't do puppets, Ash growled. You won't have a choice, Zoey said. She stepped closer, invading his personal space. She placed a hand on his knee, her grip tight, possessive. Unless you have a phalanx. Unless you have people who don't give a damn about the fame or the money, but who care about you. Ash frowned. You guys are my friends. I know you have my back. Friends isn't enough, Dawn whispered. Her face was inches from his now. He could smell her perfume, vanilla and something sharper, like winter air. Friends go home, Ash. Friends have their own lives. This title. It's a life sentence. You need partners. Real partners. Ash looked at Dawn, then at Zoey. What are you saying? We're saying we aren't leaving, Zoey said, her voice dropping to a husky murmur. We've watched you for years. We've watched you throw yourself into fire, off cliffs, into the paths of gods. And we're done watching from the sidelines. We want in, Dawn said. All the way in. No more traveling companions. No more, see you next time. We want to share the burden. We want to share the life. She paused, her eyes searching his. We want to share you. The silence in the locker room was absolute. The pounding on the door seemed to fade into background noise. Ash stared at them. His brain, already fried from the battle, struggled to process the shift. This wasn't a confession of love, it was a negotiation of terms. It was a coup. You too. Ash started, his voice failing. We talked about it, Zoey said matter-of-factly. We tried to decide who should pursue you. We realized neither of us was willing to back down. And we realized that between the three of us, we cover every angle. You have the power. Dawn has the image. I have the shadows. We're a triad, Ash, Dawn said, her thumb stroking his collarbone. We always have been. We're just making it official. But you have to agree. You have to let us in. No secrets. No running off to save the world alone. You belong to us now. It was terrifying. It was the most arrogant, presumptuous thing anyone had ever said to him. And as he looked at them, Dawn's fierce intelligence, Zoey's lethal competence, he realized it was exactly what he needed. He felt an anchor dropping in the storm of his life. And if I say no? Ash asked, a ghost of a smile touching his lips. Then we knock you unconscious, smuggle you out in a laundry cart, and ask you again when you wake up, Zoey said, deadpan. Ash laughed. It was a dry, broken sound, but it was real. Okay, he breathed. Okay. Dawn smiled, a radiant, dangerous thing. She leaned in and kissed him. It wasn't tentative. It was a claim. It tasted of victory and fear. Zoey didn't wait, she leaned in from the other side, her lips brushing his jaw, her hand gripping his thigh tight enough to bruise. For a moment, the world narrowed down to the heat of their bodies, the smell of vanilla and sweat, and the realization that his life had just fundamentally changed. Then, the vent cover above the lockers exploded. There was no warning. 1 second, Ash was being kissed, the next, a canister hit the floor with a metallic clang. Hiss. Thick, gray smoke billowed out instantly, filling the small room. Down. Zoey screamed, tackling Ash and Dawn off the bench. They hit the wet tiles hard. Ash's instincts, honed by years of surviving things that should have killed him, took over. He rolled, grabbing Pikachu. Pikachu, iron tail on the door. Ash roared. Pikachu woke instantly, eyes snapping open. But as the little mouse tried to summon the energy, sparks merely sputtered from his cheeks. He coughed, curling up. It's a suppressor. Dawn choked out, pulling her coat over her mouth. Gas. Don't breathe it. A figure dropped from the ceiling vent. They moved with unnatural fluidity, clad in matte black tactical armor, face obscured by a gas mask with glowing red lenses. In their hand was a collapsible shock baton that hummed with a violet energy Ash had never seen before. This wasn't a fan. This was an executioner. The assassin didn't speak. They lunged for Ash, the baton sweeping down in a lethal arc aimed at his skull. Ash was fast, but he was exhausted. He barely scrambled back, the baton cracking the tile where his head had been a fraction of a second ago. Shards of ceramic flew like shrapnel. Zoey moved. She didn't have a Pokemon out. She grabbed the heavy steel bench they had been sitting on and heaved it. It was a feat of hysterical strength. The bench slammed into the assassin's knees, throwing them off balance. "Dawn! Light!" Zoey shouted. Dawn didn't hesitate. She reached into her dress coat and pulled out a flashbang, a coordinator's tool for quick escapes, illegal in league matches but standard for a girl traveling alone. She pulled the pin and rolled it. Crack boom. The room turned white. The assassin staggered back, blinding by the magnesium flare. "Ash, move!" Dawn yelled, grabbing his arm. But Ash didn't run. The sight of the violet energy on the baton triggered a memory, something he had seen in the deep history books of Sinnoh. That wasn't electric-type energy. That was void energy. If he ran, they would kill Dawn and Zoey. Ash planted his feet. He felt the hum of his aura, usually a roaring river, now suppressed to a trickle by the gas. But a trickle was enough. He ducked under the assassin's wild swing. He stepped inside the guard, jamming his shoulder into the assassin's solar plexus. It was like hitting a brick wall. The armor absorbed the impact. The assassin grabbed Ash by the throat, lifting him off the ground. The gas mask stared into his eyes. Ash kicked out, his boots connecting with the assassin's shin, but the grip tightened. Black spots danced in his vision. "Your reign ends before it begins," a digitized voice rasped from the mask. Zoey was there. She had grabbed a shard of the broken ceramic tile. She didn't go for the armor. She jammed the jagged shard into the soft unarmored joint at the assassin's armpit. The assassin grunted, dropping Ash. Ash hit the floor, gasping. Dawn was there, winding up. She held a heavy fire extinguisher she'd ripped from the wall. With a primal scream that sounded nothing like a contest princess, she swung it like a baseball bat. The heavy steel cylinder connected with the side of the assassin's helmet with a sickening crunch. The lens shattered. The assassin stumbled back, disoriented. "Now!" Ash yelled. He didn't have Pikachu. He didn't have Charizard. He had his partners. Ash swept the assassin's legs. As the armored figure fell, Zoey and Dawn were already moving. They didn't need orders. They pinned the assassin's arms, using their body weight. Ash scrambled on top, ripping the baton from the assassin's grip. He reversed it, jamming the tip into the exposed circuitry of the assassin's chest plate. "Who sent you?" Ash roared, pressing the baton down. The violet energy arced, biting into the armor. The assassin convulsed, the suit short-circuiting. The Aegis, sees, all. The figure went limp as the suit's fail-safes kicked in, stunning the wearer into unconsciousness. Ash rolled off, coughing violently. The smoke was clearing, sucked out by the hallway draft now that the door had been blown slightly ajar by the flashbang. For a long moment, the three of them just lay on the locker room floor, surrounded by broken glass and smoke. Ash was bleeding from a cut on his cheek. Dawn's pristine white coat was ruined, smeared with soot and blood. Zoey was nursing a bruised wrist. Ash looked at them. Really looked at them. They hadn't screamed. They hadn't panicked. When the violence started, they hadn't looked to him to save them, they had become weapons. Ash began to laugh. It was a breathless, wheezing sound. "What?" Dawn panted, wiping soot from her forehead, leaving a dark streak. "You guys." Ash shook his head, sitting up and pulling Pikachu into his lap. The mouse was waking up, groggy. "You demanded to be part of my life. 10 minutes later, we're fighting a cyborg ninja in a locker room." Zoey spat blood on the floor, she must have bitten her tongue. She grinned, sharp and wolfish. "Trial by fire, Ash." "We passed." Ash looked at the unconscious assassin, then back to the two women who had just saved his life. The fear of the future, of the politics and the throne, evaporated. If this was his inner circle, he could conquer the world. He reached out. Dawn took his left hand. Zoey took his right. "Okay," Ash said again, his voice steel. "The Aegis. Whoever they are, they just made a mistake." "Huge mistake," Dawn agreed, her eyes cold. "They missed," Zoey finished. Outside, the pounding on the door resumed. The world was coming in. But Ash Ketchum no longer felt alone. He squeezed their hands, pulled himself to his feet, and prepared to face the lions. "Let's go say hello to my subjects," Ash said. Chapter 1 End. Chapter 2, The Gilded Cage. The sheets were too soft. That was the first thing Ash noticed when he woke up. They were made of some high thread count silk that felt like water against his skin, a stark contrast to the sleeping bags and rough canvas tents that had been his home for the better part of a decade. He blinked open one eye. The ceiling was vaulted, painted with a fresco of Sinoa's mythology, Mesprit, a Zelf, and Uxie drifting over a stylized Mount Coronet. It was beautiful, opulent, and suffocating. Ash groaned, rolling over. His body felt like a bruised peach. The adrenaline of the finals had drained away, leaving behind the deep, structural ache of muscles pushed past their breaking point. "You're awake." Finally. Ash pushed himself up on his elbows. Dawn was sitting at the massive mahogany vanity across the room, already fully dressed. She wore a slate-gray blazer over a black turtleneck, sharp, professional, and severe. She was speaking into a headset, her fingers flying across a holographic tablet. "No," Dawn said into the mic, her voice clipping the air. "I don't care what the Jubilife TV schedule is. The monarch does not do morning talk shows. He fights. He doesn't bake puffins with celebrities. Cancel it. And tell the Sylph representative that if they send another gift basket to the private quarters, I will have their contract reviewed for security breaches." She tapped the headset off and spun her chair around. Her expression softened just a fraction as she looked at him. "Welcome to day 1, Your Majesty." Ash sat up, rubbing his face. "Please don't call me that." "Get used to it," Zoe's voice came from the balcony. The glass doors were open, letting in the chill mountain air. Zoe stepped inside, closing the door behind her. She was dressed in tactical casual, cargo pants, heavy boots, and a loose shirt that didn't quite hide the shoulder holster she was now wearing. "Perimeter is clear," Zoe said, grabbing an apple from a fruit bowl that probably cost more than Ash's first bike. "Although I found 3 drones trying to peek into the windows. I had Glamo jam their frequencies. They dropped out of the sky like stones." Ash swung his legs out of bed. "Drones? Already? You're the most famous person on the planet right now, Ash," Dawn said, standing up and walking over to him. She handed him a cup of black coffee. It was strong enough to strip paint. "Cynthia was respected. You're a phenomenon. A kid from Kanto who came out of nowhere and broke the unbreakable wall. Everyone wants a piece." Ash took the coffee, letting the warmth seep into his hands. He looked at the two of them. It had been 12 hours since the assassin in the locker room. 12 hours since they had forged their pact. The dynamic in the room was heavy, electric. They weren't just friends anymore. They were a unit. Zoe leaned against the bedpost, biting into the apple. "We have a problem with the security detail the League provided. I don't trust them. Half of them are private contractors with ties to the energy sector. I'm cycling them out for people I know. Gym leader waking staff. Candace sent over some of her best icy terrain trackers." "Good," Ash said. He trusted Zoe's paranoia more than he trusted his own senses right now. "What's the agenda?" Dawn pulled up a schedule on her tablet. It was a wall of text. 0900 hours, debrief with Cynthia. 1000 hours, the League Board introduction. 1,200 hours, press statement, written, no questions. 1,400 hours, the inaugural exhibition match. Ash choked on his coffee. Exhibition match? I can barely walk. Tradition, Dawn said, not looking up. The new monarch has to demonstrate their vitality. It silences the rumors that you won by luck. Don't worry, they'll put you up against someone manageable. I don't want manageable, Ash muttered, standing up and stretching. His spine popped audibly. If I fight for real. Zoey smirked. That's what we're counting on. Now go shower. You smell like victory and dried blood. The champion's office, his office now, was located at the apex of the Sunnyshore's Tower, a marvel of engineering that overlooked the ocean. The walls were glass, offering a panoramic view of the Sinno region. Cynthia was there, standing by the window, looking out at the turbulent grey sea. The room was filled with boxes. The shelves, once lined with her archaeological finds and ancient tomes, were bare. It felt wrong. It felt like walking into a church that had been deconsecrated. It's a nice view, Cynthia said without turning around. On clear days, you can see the storm front approaching from the north. It gives you about an hour's warning before the rain hits. Ash walked in, Pikachu perched on his shoulder. The electric mouse was looking better, though still tired, his ears twitching at the emptiness of the room. You don't have to leave so soon, Ash said. Cynthia turned. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. She looked like a weight had been lifted from her, but the absence of that weight had left her unmoored. A kingdom cannot have two monarchs, Ash. It confuses the people. She walked over to her desk, a massive slab of black wood, and ran her hand over it. This desk. I've signed treaties here. I've ordered quarantines during the Pokerus outbreaks. I've authorized relief funds for cities destroyed by legendaries. She looked up at him, her gaze piercing. Do you know why I lost yesterday? Ash stiffened. Because Garchomp missed the timing on that dragon rush. Garchomp doesn't miss, Cynthia said softly. We lost because for a split second, I hesitated. And in that second, you didn't. She walked around the desk and leaned against it, crossing her arms. I've felt it for months. A shifting tide. The world is changing, Ash. The old ways, the ceremonial battles, the gentlemen's agreements, the stability, it's fracturing. Something is rising beneath the surface. I've been champion for a long time. I'm a peacetime ruler. I preserve history. She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. But the world doesn't need a historian anymore. It needs a warrior. It needs someone who burns hot enough to hold back the dark. Ash frowned. You're talking about the assassin? The Aegis? Cynthia's eyes widened slightly. You've met them? In the locker room, Ash said grimly. Dawn and Zoey handled it. Cynthia let out a long, shaky breath. Then it's already started. The Aegis isn't just a group, Ash. It's an ideology. They believe that humanity has been held hostage by the power of Pokemon for too long. They want to level the playing field. They want to kill the gods. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a small, heavy object wrapped in velvet. She pressed it into Ash's hand. This is the master key to the Spear Pillar archives. There are records there that the League Board has tried to bury. Read them. Trust no one in a suit. Trust only your Pokemon, and those two girls who guard you like Cerberus. She picked up her bag, slinging it over her shoulder. She walked to the door, then stopped. The cage is gilded, Ash, she said, looking back. But it is still a cage. Don't let them clip your wings. With that, the greatest champion Sinnoh had ever known walked out, leaving Ash alone in the glass tower. The boardroom smelled of old money and stale air. 20 people sat around the oval table. Most were men in their 60s, wearing suits that cost more than Ash's house in Pallet Town. These were the sponsors, the regional directors, the corporate liaisons. The people who actually ran the world while the champions waved to the crowds. Ash sat at the head of the table. He felt ridiculous in the formal ceremonial robes they had forced him to wear, heavy velvet with gold embroidery. Dawn sat to his right, a tablet in front of her. Zoey stood behind his chair, her arms crossed, her eyes scanning the room like a hawk. Mr. Ketchum, a man with thinning hair and a face like a dried apple, spoke up. "I am Director Silas Vane, Head of Infrastructure and Resource Management." Ash looked at him. Vane was nondescript. He had a pleasant, forgettable face, rimless glasses, and a soft voice. But his eyes were dead. They were the eyes of a Sharpedo, black, flat, and devoid of empathy. "Director," Ash acknowledged. "We have a few administrative items to clear before your exhibition match," Vane said, sliding a holographic document across the table. "Standard authorizations. Renewal of the gym leader budgets, maintenance contracts for the Pokemon centers, and the expansion permit for the Sector 4, mining operation near Mount Coronet." Dawn leaned forward, her eyes scanning the document rapidly. "Sector 4. That's protected land. It's a gabite nesting ground." "It was," Vane corrected smoothly. "But the energy demands of the region are skyrocketing. We've discovered a new vein of evolutionary stones and rare minerals that could reduce our energy imports from Kanto by 40%. It's a vital economic stimulus." "It destroys the habitat," Dawn countered. "The gabite will become aggressive. They'll migrate into Celestic Town. We have containment protocols," Vane dismissed her, looking directly at Ash. "Champion, this is a formality. The previous administration was hesitant. But we need decisive action. The economy is fragile after the market shifts caused by your victory. Signing this stabilizes the index." Ash looked at the document. It was a map of M. Coronet, with a massive red zone marked for excavation. It was right next to the spear pillar. "The shifting tide," Cynthia spoke of. "The Aegis. The assassin with the violet energy." "What are you mining for, Director?" Ash asked quietly. Vane blinked. "Minerals. Evolution stones. And artifacts." Ash pressed. "Ancient technology." Vane's smile didn't waver, but the air in the room grew colder. "Occasional discoveries are made, yes. They are sent to the museum." Ash pushed the hologram away. "I'm not signing it." Silence descended on the room. The other board members shifted uncomfortably. "Mr. Ketchum," Vane said, his voice taking on a patronizing edge. "I don't think you understand. This isn't a Pokemon battle. You don't just choose an attack. This is governance. Hundreds of jobs are on the line. And thousands of Pokemon lives," Ash said. He stood up. The heavy robe slid off his shoulders, revealing the simple black t-shirt and combat trousers he wore underneath. "I've traveled every inch of this region. I've slept in those caves. If you start drilling into Coronet, you wake up things you can't control." "You are the champion," Vane said, his voice hardening. "Not the Emperor. You answer to this board." "No," Zoey spoke up from behind him. Her voice was a whip crack. "Read the charter, Director. Article 15, Section 2. In matters of ecological security and wild Pokemon welfare, the champion's word is absolute law. He doesn't answer to you. You answer to him." Vane turned his gaze to Zoey. For a second, the mask slipped, and pure, concentrated malice shone through. "The coordinator speaks of laws." "The monarch speaks," Ash interrupted, his voice low and vibrating with a sudden flare of aura. The lights in the room flickered. Pikachu's cheek sparked. "The permit is denied. Shut down the operation." If I see a single drill running in Sector 4 by tomorrow, I'm going there myself. And I won't be bringing a clipboard. Ash turned to Dawn. We're done here. Agreed, Dawn said, closing her tablet with a satisfying snap. They walked out, leaving the board in stunned silence. As the doors closed, Ash felt a trickle of sweat go down his back. That guy, Ash whispered to Zoey. Vane. He's the one. I know, Zoey murmured. I saw the way he looked at Pikachu. Like he was looking at a battery, not a living thing. He's dangerous, Dawn added, checking her data pad as they walked briskly down the corridor. And you just humiliated him in front of his peers. He's going to retaliate. Let him try, Ash said. Now, who am I fighting? The exhibition stadium was smaller than the main league arena, seating only 10,000, but it was packed to the rafters. The air was electric. Ash stood in the tunnel, the roar of the crowd washing over him. He felt different today. Yesterday, he was a challenger. Today, he was the target. Your opponent is Flint, Dawn said, adjusting Ash's collar. He volunteered. He says he wants to see if you've still got the fire after the celebration. Flint, Ash grinned. Good. Don't get cocky, Zoey warned, handing him his belt. He's an Elite Four member. He's not going to go easy just because it's an exhibition. He wants to knock the new king down a peg. I need to send a message, Ash said, clipping the belt on. He looked at the two of them. Vane is watching. The board is watching. They think I'm a kid who got lucky. They think they can manage me. He grabbed a specific pokeball from his belt. It wasn't Pikachu's. I need to show them what happens when they cross the line. Ash walked out into the light. The announcer screamed his name. Flint was already waiting on the field, his signature red afro bobbing as he bounced on the balls of his feet. His Infernape stood beside him, flames roaring from its head. Yo, champ! Flint yelled, grinning. Ready to get roasted? Ash took his place in the trainer's box. He didn't smile. He didn't taunt back. He stood with a stillness that was unnerving. Battle begin, the referee shouted. Infernape, flare blitz. Let's say hello. Flint commanded. The fire monkey exploded forward, wrapped in a cloak of blue fire. The heat was intense, baking the front rows of the audience. It was a kill shot right out of the gate. Ash watched the incoming missile. He didn't move. Lucario, Ash said calmly. He threw the ball. Lucario materialized. But he didn't come out in a defensive stance. He came out mid-stride, his eyes glowing with blue aura. Catch it, Ash said. The crowd gasped. Lucario didn't dodge. He didn't use a move. He simply raised his hands. Boom. Infernape slammed into Lucario. The ground cracked. Dust billowed up. But when the dust cleared, Lucario was standing firm, his feet dug into the concrete. He had caught Infernape's fists. The flare blitz sizzled and died against a visible shield of aura that coated Lucario's skin. Flint's jaw dropped. What? Ash raised his hand. He wasn't looking at Flint. He was looking up at the VIP box, where he knew Vane was sitting behind the glass. Aura sphere, Ash commanded. Point blank. Lucario roared, a pulse of energy exploding from his chest. It slammed into Infernape with the force of a cannonball. The fire type was launched backward, tumbling across the field, skipping like a stone until it smashed into the energy barrier protecting the crowd. Infernape slumped. One hit. The stadium went silent. This wasn't a battle. This was a dismantling. Flint recalled his Pokémon, looking shaken. Okay. Magmortar, you're up. The massive fire cannon materialized. Fire blast. Flint yelled, desperation creeping into his voice. Extreme speed, Ash whispered. Lucario vanished. There was a sonic boom. Magmortar didn't even get the attack off. Lucario appeared behind it, a blue blur. A palm strike to the back of the neck. Magmortar collapsed. Ash didn't celebrate. He recalled Lucario and looked up at the VIP box again. His eyes were cold, hard, and promising violence. I see you, the look said. And I am coming for you. High above in the VIP box, Director Silas Vane swirled the whiskey in his glass. He watched the monitor as Ash Ketchum walked off the field without waving to the crowd. He's uncontrollable, a nervous aide whispered beside him. He rejected the mining permit. He's putting his own people in security. Vane took a sip of his drink. He's a child playing with a loaded gun. He thinks power is about strength. He thinks because he can punch hard, he can rule. Vane turned away from the window. He walked over to a secure terminal on the wall. He placed his hand on the scanner. Authorize Phase 2, Vane said calmly. Sir, the aide asked. Phase 2 requires the dampener array to be at 50%. We aren't ready. We accelerate the timeline, Vane said. Ash Ketchum is not a variable I anticipated. He is a conduit. Did you see the aura? He resonates with the Pokémon. If we don't break him, he will rally the entire region against us. Vane typed in a command. The screen flashed red. Project, red chain, activated. Target, spear pillar. Secondary target, the Monarch. Let him have his moment, Vane said, walking out of the box. Let him feel invincible. It makes the fall so much more shattering. Chapter 2 End. Chapter 3, Shadows over Hearthome. The armored limousine cut through the rain-slicked highway like a shark through dark water. Inside, the silence was thick, insulated from the hum of the tires and the drumming of the storm against the reinforced glass. Ash sat in the rear-facing seat, watching the lights of Eterna Forest blur past. He hadn't slept in 30 hours. His body was running on caffeine and a strange, buzzing anxiety that refused to settle. Stop checking the perimeter, Ash, Zoey said. She was sitting opposite him, her legs crossed, a tablet balanced on her knee. We have 3 decoy cars running parallel routes. The League security detail, the new one I vetted, is sandwiching us. Nobody knows we're in this specific vehicle. I'm not checking the perimeter, Ash lied. He pulled his gaze from the window. I'm just, watching. You're vibrating, Dawn murmured from beside him. She had kicked off her heels and was curled into the corner of the leather seat, reviewing a holographic itinerary. She reached out, her hand finding his in the dim light. Her fingers were warm. The diplomatic tour is a cover, remember? You're supposed to be relaxing. We're going to Hearthome. It's friendly territory. Is it? Ash asked, squeezing her hand. Vane is on the board. Vane controls the infrastructure. Which means Vane is everywhere. He's in Sunnyshore's, Zoey corrected without looking up. And he's furious because you publicly shamed him and then decimated Flint in a way that made the Elite Four look like amateurs. You bought us breathing room. Ash sighed, leaning his head back against the leather. I didn't want to humiliate Flint. I just needed them to stop looking at me like a mascot. Mission accomplished, Dawn said dryly. The press is calling you the Iron Monarch. Approval ratings are through the roof, but the political sector is terrified. It's a perfect balance. The car slowed as it began the descent into Hearthome City. The City of Warmth was usually a beacon of contest culture and commerce, but tonight, under the shroud of the storm, it looked jagged and cold. Where are we staying? Ash asked. The hotel? Too public, Zoey said. Fantina called in a favor. She's lending us her private estate on the outskirts. High walls, private security, no press. Just us. Just us. The words hung in the air. Since the locker room, since the pact, they hadn't really had a moment to be us. They had been managing crises, dodging cameras, and surviving assassinations. Ash looked at Dawn, then across at Zoey. The reality of their arrangement was still settling in. It wasn't just a strategic alliance. He could feel the gravity of it pulling them together. He realized, with a start, that he didn't want to be anywhere else. Fantina's estate was a Gothic masterpiece of stone and stained glass, nestled in the hills overlooking the city. It was silent, save for the crackle of a fireplace in the main hall that had been lit in anticipation of their arrival. The security detail took up positions at the gate and the perimeter wall. Inside, the heavy oak doors shut out the world. Ash dropped his duffel bag on the floor. The silence was deafening. "So," Ash said, rubbing the back of his neck. "This is nice." Zoey locked the front door, checking the mechanism with a professional scrutiny. She turned around, leaning back against the wood. She looked at Ash, then at Dawn. The tactical hardness she wore like armor slipped, revealing a rare vulnerability. "We need to set ground rules," Zoey said. "Rules?" Ash asked. For this, she gestured between the three of them. "The press thinks we're your handlers. The League thinks we're your advisors. But in here." Dawn stepped forward. She walked up to Ash, reached up, and unclipped the heavy cloak he was still wearing. She tossed it onto a chair. Then she turned to Zoey. "In here," Dawn said softly, "we're just Ash, Dawn, and Zoey. No titles." She walked over to Zoey, taking the redhead's hand and pulling her into the center of the room. Dawn stood between them, the fulcrum of the triad. "Ash battles," Dawn said, looking at Zoey. "You protect. I manage. That's the job. But what about the rest? Who cooks? Who makes sure Ash actually sleeps? Who stops you from working yourself into a paranoia spiral?" Zoey cracked a smile. "I don't spiral. I assess risks." "You spiral," Ash and Dawn said in unison. Ash stepped closer. The distance between them vanished. He felt clumsy, unsure of the mechanics of a three-way dynamic, but the instinct was there. He reached out, wrapping one arm around Dawn's waist and the other around Zoey's shoulders, pulling them into a huddle. It wasn't sexual, not yet. It was grounding. It was a physical affirmation that he wasn't carrying the sky alone anymore. "I don't know how to do this," Ash admitted, his voice rough. "I know how to train Pokémon. I know how to travel. I don't know how to be a partner. To one person, let alone two." Zoey rested her forehead against his shoulder. "You think we do? We're making it up as we go, Ash. But we're doing it together." Dawn leaned her head against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. "Just don't shut us out. That's the only rule. If you're hurting, we know. If you're scared, we know. No heroics inside this house." Ash closed his eyes, exhaling a breath he felt like he'd been holding since the finals. "Okay." They stood there for a long time, the firelight casting dancing shadows on the walls, three pillars leaning against each other to support the weight of the roof. The next morning, Hearthome City was gray. The storm had passed, leaving behind a heavy, humid fog that clung to the cobblestones. They decided to go for a walk. It was a calculated risk. They wore disguises, Ash in a beanie and heavy scarf, Dawn with dyed brown hair, a wig, and glasses, Zoey in a nondescript tracksuit. They left the security detail behind, slipping out a side gate. "We need to feel the city," Ash had argued. "I can't rule a region I can't see." They walked through Amity Square. Usually, this place was a paradise, trainers walking their cute Pokémon, children playing. Today, the park was quiet. The few people out seemed hurried, anxious. "The vibe is off," Zoey murmured, scanning the rooftops. It's too quiet. Look at the Pokemon, Dawn whispered. Ash looked. A Buniri was huddled under a bench, shivering. A Staravia was pecking aggressively at its own wing. The Pokemon weren't playing, they were distressed. Pikachu? Ash asked softly. Pikachu was hidden inside Ash's jacket. Pika, Pi, the mouse murmured. Headache. Something is wrong, Ash said, stopping in the middle of the path. Can you feel that? It's like static. In the air. I don't feel anything, Dawn said. My aura does, Ash said. He closed his eyes, focusing. The world usually felt like a tapestry of lights to him, the bright souls of people and Pokemon. But here, in the city center, there was a haze. A gray noise that washed out the colors. It's a frequency. It's interfering with them. Suddenly, a scream shattered the quiet. 50 yards away, a trainer, a young girl, was backing away from her own Pokemon. It was a Machoke. The fighting type was clutching its head, roaring in pain. Its eyes were bloodshot, pupils dilated to pinpricks. Stop. Please, stop, the girl cried. The Machoke didn't listen. It swung a massive fist, smashing a stone fountain into rubble. It turned toward the girl, raising its arm for a strike. Ash. Zoey barked. Ash was already moving. He didn't think. He didn't reach for a Pokeball because he knew, instinctively, that adding another Pokemon to this frequency would only make it worse. He sprinted across the grass. As the Machoke brought its fist down, Ash slid between the Pokemon and the girl. He didn't try to block it. He wasn't that stupid. He used the momentum, catching the Machoke's wrist and twisting his body, using a judo throw he'd learned from a fighting dojo in Johto years ago. The Machoke, unbalanced by its own rage, flew over Ash's hip and slammed into the ground. Run! Ash yelled to the girl. The Machoke scrambled up, roaring. It wasn't fighting like a trained Pokemon. It was fighting like a wild animal. It lunged at Ash. Dawn! Confusion! Zoey yelled. Dawn, standing back, pulled a flashbang from her purse, not a standard one, but a coordinator's trick, a glitter bomb designed to disorient senses. She threw it. A cloud of pink smoke and sparkles exploded in Machoke's face. It flailed, blinded. Zoey moved in. She was fast, low to the ground. She swept the Machoke's legs, bringing the heavy Pokemon down again. She pulled a syringe from her pocket, a standard tranquilizer used for capturing aggressive wild Pokemon, and jammed it into the Machoke's neck. The Pokemon thrashed once, then slumped into unconsciousness. Silence returned to the park. Ash stood up, brushing dirt off his coat. His heart was hammering. He looked at the fallen Machoke. That wasn't rage, Ash said, kneeling beside it. He placed a hand on the Pokemon's chest. It was panic. Total sensory overload. Zoey was already scanning the area with a handheld device she'd pulled from her pocket. I'm picking up a signal. Ultra-low frequency. Broadcast range, short. It's coming from nearby. A jammer? Dawn asked, helping the terrified girl up and pointing her toward the park exit. No, Ash said, his face darkening. A test. They tracked the signal to the industrial district, a grid of warehouses and factories on the edge of the city. The fog was thicker here, mixing with smog. Zoey led the way, moving through the shadows of the alleyways. Signal is strongest here, she whispered, pointing to a nondescript brick building. The sign on the door reads Sinnoh Logistics, Private Storage. There are guards, Dawn noted, peering around the corner. 2 men stood by the loading dock. They weren't wearing security uniforms. They wore tactical gear, similar to the assassin, but stripped down. No masks, just heavy vests and assault rifles. Mercenaries, Zoey confirmed. Professional. We need to get in there, Ash said. If they're broadcasting that signal, they're hurting every Pokemon in the city. We can't use our teams, Dawn realized, horror dawning on her face. If we release them close to the source, they'll go berserk like the Mach-Hoke, Ash finished. Or they'll be paralyzed. He looked at his belt. Pikachu was shivering in his jacket. Charizard, Lucario, Gengar, they were all effectively neutralized. So we do this the old-fashioned way, Zoey said, checking the knife in her boot. Ash cracked his knuckles. I hate the old-fashioned way. Liar, Dawn smirked, though her hands were trembling slightly as she picked up a rusted iron pipe from the alley floor. You live for this plan? Ash asked. I cut the power, Zoey said. Dawn creates a diversion at the front. Ash, you are the breach. Got it. The warehouse went dark. Inside, emergency lights flickered on, bathing the vast space in a sickly red glow. The interior was filled with crates stamped with the Aegis insignia, a shield broken by a spear. In the center of the room was a massive machine, humming with a low, throbbing bass note. It looked like a radar dish pointed downward. Power failure, a guard shouted. Check the generator. Hey! A voice rang out from the front entrance. Dawn stood in the open doorway, silhouetted by the gray light outside. She looked small, harmless. I think I'm lost. Is this the contest hall? 3 guards turned toward her, weapons raised. Civilian. Get back. While their attention was fixed on the girl in the doorway, the skylight above the machine shattered. Ash Ketchum dropped 20 feet. He landed on a stack of crates, rolling instantly to absorb the impact. He launched himself at the nearest mercenary before the man could turn around. Ash didn't hold back. He drove his shoulder into the man's spine, sending him crashing into a forklift. Contact, a guard screamed. Center floor. Gunfire erupted. Bullets sparked off the metal crates Ash dove behind. Zoey, now. Ash yelled into his comms earpiece. From the shadows of the catwalks, smoke canisters dropped. Zoey had emptied her supply. The floor was instantly covered in thick, white fog. Ash moved through the smoke. He couldn't use aura to sense them, the machine was scrambling it, but he could hear them. He tackled a guard, wrestling the rifle away and tossing it aside. He followed up with a right hook that rattled the man's teeth. Another guard lunged with a knife. Ash caught the wrist, twisting it violently until the bone snapped, then kicked the man in the chest. It was brutal, messy work. Ash wasn't a martial arts master, but he was strong, fast, and had reflexes honed by dodging hyperbeams. Dawn was in the fray now. She wasn't fighting head-on. She was using the environment. She pulled the release lever on a shelving unit, burying 2 mercenaries under an avalanche of cardboard boxes. She swung her iron pipe at the knees of a third, dropping him. Zoey dropped from the rafters, landing silently behind the squad leader. She put him in a sleeper hold, dragging him into the darkness. The machine. Ash roared, fighting off 2 men who were trying to pin him. Shut it down. I'm trying. Zoey yelled. She was at the console of the device. It's encrypted. I can't hack it. Then break it. Ash threw one of the mercenaries into the other. He had a clear path to the machine. But as he ran toward it, a massive figure stepped out of the shadows near the device. It was a man in a mech suit, an exoskeleton loader repurposed for combat. The hydraulic claws snapped menacingly. The Monarch, the pilot sneered, his voice amplified. Director Vane sends his regards. The claw swung. Ash dove, barely missing being cut in half. The claw smashed into the concrete floor, sending debris flying. Ash. Dawn screamed. Ash scrambled up. He was cornered against the humming machine. The frequency was so loud here his teeth ached. He couldn't fight a mech suit with bare hands. He looked at the machine. It was the source of the dampening field. If he destroyed it. The mech raised its claw for a killing blow. Ash grabbed a poke ball from his belt. The heavy ball, the one made of ancient stone he had received in Kalos. Lucario. Ash screamed, not commanding, but pleading. Break through. He threw the ball, not at the mech, but at the control panel of the machine. The ball hit the console. Usually, the dampening field would prevent the release. But the bond between Ash and Lucario had been forged in the aura of the Tree of Beginning. It wasn't just a signal, it was a soul link. The ball shattered, literally cracked open from the force of the resistance. A beam of blue light exploded outward. Lucario materialized. He was on his knees, clutching his head, screaming in pain from the frequency. Aura sphere. Ash yelled, diving toward his partner. Destroy the source. Lucario forced his eyes open. They were glowing with a feral intensity. He didn't form a sphere. He channeled the chaotic, painful energy of the jammer into his own body. He roared, and thrust his palms directly into the machine's core. Crack ZZZRT. The machine exploded. Metal shrapnel flew everywhere. The humming noise died instantly, replaced by the ringing in their ears. With the field down, the silence was pure. The mech pilot froze. System error. Dampener offline. Lucario stood up. He shook himself, the blue aura flaring to life, bright and clean. He looked at the mech. He looked at Ash, who was bleeding from a cut on his forehead. Lucario snarled. The mech pilot tried to back up. Wait, Bone Rush, Ash whispered. Lucario manifested a shaft of pure energy. He moved so fast he was invisible. Whack. 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 The mech fell apart. The hydraulic arms were severed. The legs were swept. The pilot was ejected from the cockpit, landing hard on the concrete. Lucario stood over the pilot, the glowing bone staff poised at his throat. Ash walked over, breathing hard. He wiped the blood from his eyes. Dawn and Zoey emerged from the smoke, battered but standing. Ash looked down at the pilot. Tell Vane, Ash said, his voice cold, that if he wants to take my power, he's going to have to come here and take it himself. Later, outside the warehouse, the police sirens were wailing in the distance. They had already cleared the area, leaving the mercenaries tied up for the authorities, with an anonymous tip from Zoey. They stood in the alleyway, catching their breath. That wasn't a factory, Zoey said, looking at the data she had managed to scrape from the terminal before it exploded. It was a distribution hub. For what? Dawn asked. Dampeners, Zoey said, showing them the tablet. Thousands of them. They're shipping them to every major city in Sinnoh. Jubilife, Veilstone, Snowpoint. Ash stared at the map. The red dots covered the region. It's not just an assassination, Ash realized. It's a coup. Vane is going to turn off the Pokémon. All of them. If he flips that switch, Dawn whispered, society collapses. No power, no transport, no defense. The Aegis walks in and takes over. Ash looked at his fist. He felt the phantom vibration of the punch he had thrown. He wants a war, Ash said. He wants to prove that humans don't need Pokémon. Ash turned to his partners. We need to go to Celestic Town, Ash said. Cynthia said the tech is based on the red chain. We need to know how to stop it before he turns the lights out on the whole world. Zoey nodded, holstering her tablet. Then we pack. We're done with the diplomatic tour. Dawn took Ash's hand. We're going to war. Ash looked up at the clearing sky. The storm was gone, but a darker one was coming. Let's go. Chapter 3 End. Chapter 4, The Fracture Point. The footage was grainy, stripped of color and context, looping endlessly on the massive holographic screen that dominated the safe house living room. On the screen, a figure shrouded in shadow, Ash, drove a knee into the chest of a man who looked like a security guard. The audio had been enhanced, turning the mercenary's grunt of pain into a victim's plea for mercy. Then, the cut changed. Lucario, eyes glowing with demonic blue light, tore the arm off a mechanical loader. The pilot's scream was piercing. The headline running beneath the footage was in bold, blood-red text, "Champion or Tyrant?" The heart-home brutality. Ash stood in the center of the room, staring at the screen. He was motionless, a statue carved from tension. His hands were clenched so tightly that his knuckles were white, the veins in his forearms standing out like cords. "Turn it off," Ash said, his voice a low rumble. "No," Dawn said. She sat on the sofa, surrounded by 3 different tablets, her eyes red-rimmed but dry. "We need to see what they're seeing. We need to know the narrative. The narrative is a lie." Ash spun around, and the movement was so violent that Pikachu, perched on the armrest, flinched. They were mercenaries. They were hurting Pokémon. That pilot was trying to cut me in half. "The video doesn't show the pilot attacking," Zoey said from the kitchen archway. She was cleaning a Glock 19, the metallic click-clack of the slide racking punctuating the silence. "It doesn't show the dampener machine. It doesn't show the weapon caches." Vane scrubbed it. "All the public sees is the new monarch beating the hell out of private logistics contractors protecting a warehouse. He's painting you as unstable," Dawn said, scrolling through a feed of social media comments. Her face was pale. "They're saying the power went to your head. They're saying you're suffering from PTSD and taking it out on civilians. Ash, the polls have dropped 40 points in 6 hours. There are protests forming outside the Jubilife TV station." Ash paced the room, a caged tiger. "I don't care about polls. I care about the truth. The truth doesn't matter if no one believes it." Dawn snapped, slamming a tablet down on the coffee table. The glass screen cracked. The sound echoed in the room. Ash stopped pacing. He looked at Dawn. For the first time since they had reunited, there was genuine anger in her eyes. Not at Vane, but at the situation, and by extension, at him. "You don't get it," Dawn said, her voice trembling with suppressed rage. "You think you can just punch your way through this? You think because you're the strongest trainer in the world, the rules don't apply? Vane isn't fighting you with Pokémon. He's fighting you with perception. And right now, you're helping him." "Helping him?" Ash's voice rose. "I destroyed the machine. I saved the city. You gave him the weapon." Dawn stood up, walking toward him. "We should have documented it. We should have waited for the press. Instead, you went in like a vigilante. Now Vane is the victim, and you're the monster. And because I'm with you, I'm the monster's handler. Look at this." She shoved her phone into his chest. It was a direct message on her coordinator page. "Traitor. You're manipulating him. Watch your back." Ash stared at the message. A cold pit opened in his stomach. I didn't know." "Of course you didn't know," Zoey cut in, her tone icy. She holstered the gun and walked into the room. "Because you don't look at the shadows, Ash. You look at the light. You see a problem, you hit it. But now we are taking the hits for you." "That's not fair," Ash whispered. "Fair?" Zoey laughed, a harsh, barking sound. "We're past fair. We're in survival mode. Vane knows exactly where to hit us. He's isolating you. He wants you angry. He wants you to lash out so he can justify bringing in the Aegis as a peacekeeping force. So what do we do?" Ash demanded, throwing his hands up. Do we issue a press release? Do we ask nicely? While he builds more machines. We kill him, Zoey said. The room went dead silent. Ash blinked. What? You heard me, Zoey said, leaning against the wall, crossing her arms. Her eyes were dark, devoid of the usual warmth she held for them. He's a terrorist. He's planning genocide against Pokemon. The legal system is compromised. The board is in his pocket. If we let him live, he wins. I can get into Sunnyshoire. I can bypass his security. One bullet, Ash. Problem solved. No, Ash said immediately. We are not assassins. Speak for yourself, Zoey countered. I'm the shadow, remember? That's what you need. Absolutely not, Dawn interjected, looking horrified. If you kill a director of the League, Ash will be branded a warlord. The regions will sanction Sinnoh. It would be civil war. We're already at war, princess. Zoey snapped. You want to fight a PR battle while he builds nukes. I want to win without losing our souls. Dawn screamed back. Stop it. Ash roared. His voice carried the weight of the champion's authority. It slammed into them, physically pushing them back. The air in the room crackled with static electricity. The lamps flickered. Ash stood between them, breathing hard. He looked at Zoey, then at Dawn. The triad, the perfect unit they had forged in the locker room, was fracturing. The stress was too high, the enemy too intangible. We don't kill him, Ash said, his voice shaking with the effort of control. And we don't hide behind press releases. He walked over to the window, peering out through the blinds at the rainy forest outside. They were hiding. The monarch of Sinnoh was hiding in a rental cabin like a fugitive. We need to face him, Ash said quietly. In public. Where he can't edit the footage. Dawn sighed, rubbing her temples. The Grand Unity Gala is tonight in Jubilife. It's the biggest charity event of the year. Every gym leader, every politician, every camera in the region will be there. Vane will be there, Zoey noted. We weren't invited, Dawn said. Or rather, our invitation was likely lost in the mail. Then we crash it, Ash turned back to them. His eyes were hard again, but the frantic anger was gone, replaced by a cold resolve. We walk in the front door. We force him to look me in the eye in front of the world. If he wants a monster, I'll show him a monster. But I'll show him the kind that eats tyrants. Zoey looked at him for a long moment, assessing the threat level. Then, slowly, the tension left her shoulders. She nodded. The Lions Denver. It's stupid. It's suicide. She smirked. I'm in. Dawn looked between them, then let out a defeated groan. I'm going to need a really stunning dress to distract from the fact that we're essentially walking into a trap. You handle the crowd, Ash said to Dawn. Zoey, you watch the perimeter. I handle Vane. And if it goes south? Zoey asked. Ash patted the poke ball at his hip. Then we remind them why I'm the champion. The Jubilife Grand Hotel was a palace of glass and gold, illuminated by 1,000 spotlights that cut through the night sky. Limousines lined the red carpet, depositing the elite of Sinnoh, women in diamonds, men in tails, Pokemon groomed to perfection. The paparazzi line was a frenzied wall of flashing lights. They were shouting questions at Fantina, at Faulkner, at the mayor. Then, a black, unmarked armored SUV pulled up to the curb. The door opened. A hush fell over the carpet. It rippled outward like a wave, silencing the reporters, the guests, even the valet drivers. Ash Ketchum stepped out. He wasn't wearing the traditional champion's robes. He wore a sharp, tailored black suit, cut modern and slim. But over his shoulders, he wore his old travel cap, the one from his first journey through Sinnoh, tattered and sun-bleached. It was a jarring symbol, a statement that he had not forgotten who he was. Dawn stepped out next. She wore a gown of midnight blue that shimmered like the night sky, dusted with crystals that caught the camera flashes. She didn't look like a sidekick. She looked like a queen. Zoey exited last. She wore a fitted tuxedo, severe and androgynous, her red hair slicked back. Her eyes scanned the rooftops, the crowd, the shadows. They walked the carpet together. The silence stretched, heavy and suffocating. Then, the shouting started. "Champion! Did you order the attack in Hardhome? Ash! Is it true you're stepping down? Dawn! Comment on the allegations of manipulation." Ash didn't stop. He didn't wave. He stared straight ahead, his face a mask of stone. He walked with a predator's gait, confident and terrifying. The crowd parted for them, not out of respect, but out of fear. They reached the top of the stairs. The doorman, flustered, moved to block them. "Invitation," the head of security stammered. Ash stopped. He looked the man in the eye. "I'm the monarch," Ash said. His voice wasn't loud, but the microphones picked it up. "My presence is the invitation." The security guard looked at Ash, then at the terrified look in his own Machamp's eyes. He stepped aside. "Enjoy the evening, sir." The ballroom was vast, suspended under a domed glass ceiling. A live orchestra played waltzes. Waiters drifted with trays of champagne. When Ash entered, the music didn't stop, but the conversation did. Hundreds of heads turned. The atmosphere shifted from celebration to a tense standoff. Ash felt the hostility. It was a physical weight. The whispers started immediately, snide comments, fearful glances. People he had known for years, gym leaders, sponsors, averted their eyes. "Keep moving," Dawn whispered, her hand resting lightly on his arm. She was smiling, a radiant, professional smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Don't look defensive. Own the space." "Target acquired," Zoey murmured into her lapel mic, 10 o'clock. "By the fountain." Ash looked. Director Silas Vane stood by the chocolate fountain, holding court with a group of investors. He looked impeccably average in a gray suit. He spotted Ash. He didn't look surprised. He smiled, a small, tight expression of amusement, and raised his glass in a mock toast. Ash started toward him. "Ash, wait," Dawn hissed. "Diplomacy first." But before they could cross the floor, a woman stepped in front of them. It was the mayor of Jubilife. She looked nervous. "Champion Ketchum," she said, her voice high and tight. We weren't expecting you. Given the recent controversy." "The controversy is manufactured, Mayor," Ash said, his voice carrying. "I'm here to assure the people that the league is secure." "Is it?" A voice cut through the crowd. Vane walked over. The crowd parted like the Red Sea. He stood 5 feet from Ash, looking relaxed, bored even. "It seems the league is only as secure as its leader's mental state," Vane said smoothly. "Tell me, Ash. Did the pilot in Hardhome threaten you? Or did he just refuse to bow?" "He was guarding a weapon, Vane," Ash said, stepping closer. The air between them grew hot. "A weapon you built." "I build infrastructure," Vane corrected, glancing at the cameras that were now circling them. "I build security. You destroy it. You are a hammer looking for a nail, and you're smashing my city to pieces." "I know what you are," Ash growled. "And I'm going to stop you." Vane sighed, shaking his head. He looked at the crowd. "You see? Threats. Violence. This is what happens when we give children the power of gods. Perhaps it is time for a change in management." The crowd murmured in agreement. Ash felt the floor tilting away from him. Vane was winning. He was using Ash's own intensity against him. Suddenly, the lights went out. Total darkness. The music stopped. A collective gasp rose from the crowd. Then, the emergency lights kicked in, strobing red. Crash. The glass dome above them shattered. Ropes dropped from the ceiling. Figures in black tactical gear rappelled down, landing on the tables, scattering champagne and screaming guests. "Nobody move," a distorted voice screamed. "This is a raid." Panic erupted. The elite of Sinnoh dissolved into a screaming mob. People trampled each other trying to get to the exits. "Zoey!" Ash yelled. "Exits are blocked." Zoey shouted back, pulling a telescoping baton from her tuxedo jacket. "They locked us in." Ash scanned the room. There were 20 attackers. They were armed with assault rifles and, Ash's heart stopped, dampener rods. They weren't here to kill the guests. They were here to create a massacre. A massacre that Vane would blame on Ash's instability. Ash looked at Vane. The director had vanished in the chaos. "They're going to kill the civilians." Dawn screamed, ducking as a spray of bullets shattered a nearby ice sculpture. "Not on my watch," Ash said. He didn't reach for a pokeball. The dampeners were already humming, he could feel the static in his teeth. His Pokémon were locked. But Ash Ketchum didn't need a Pokémon to be dangerous. "Zoey, protect the mayor." Ash ordered. "Dawn, get the guests to the kitchen." "Move." "What about you?" Dawn cried. "I'm going to draw their fire." Ash grabbed a heavy silver serving platter from a table. He ran. Not away from the shooters, but directly into the center of the room. "Hey!" Ash roared. He channeled his aura. Even suppressed, it was enough to amplify his voice into a thunderclap. "You want the champion? I'm right here." The squad leader turned. "Target confirmed. Open fire." 5 rifles turned toward Ash. Ash moved. He didn't run in a straight line. He vaulted over a banquet table, sliding across the surface as bullets chewed up the wood behind him. He kicked the platter like a frisbee. It spun through the air and smashed into the face of a mercenary, breaking his nose. Ash landed in a roll and came up holding a steak knife he'd grabbed from the table. He closed the distance. The mercenary swung his rifle. Ash ducked, slashing the tactical strap, then drove his elbow into the man's throat. The man went down. Ash grabbed the fallen rifle. He didn't fire it. He used it as a club, swinging the stock into the helmet of the next attacker. Crack. But there were too many of them. "Suppress him," the leader yelled. 3 mercenaries rushed him with stun batons. Ash backed up, parrying one blow with the rifle, but another caught him in the ribs. The voltage seized his muscles. He fell to one knee. "Ash!" Dawn screamed from the kitchen doors. A mercenary raised his rifle to execute him. Suddenly, a shadow detached itself from the ceiling. Zoey dropped. She didn't land on the floor, she landed on the mercenary's shoulders, her legs wrapping around his neck. She twisted. The man spun, firing wildly into the ceiling, before crashing down. Zoey rolled off, coming up beside Ash. She looked wild, her tuxedo torn, blood on her lip. "I told you," she grinned, breathless. "We do this together." "Where's the mayor?" Ash gasped, fighting through the pain in his chest. "Safe." Dawn barricaded the staff room. The remaining mercenaries regrouped, forming a firing line. The dampener field was intensifying. Ash could feel his connection to Pikachu fading entirely. "We can't fight them all," Zoey said, assessing the odds. "We need an equalizer." Ash looked at the squad leader. The man was holding a device, a portable generator for the dampener field. "Get me to that leader," Ash said. "I'll break the field." "Cover me," Zoey said. She grabbed a tablecloth and whipped it, creating a momentary visual screen. They moved. Ash and Zoey fought back to back. It was a dance of violence. Zoey was precision, striking nerve clusters, using the enemy's momentum. Ash was brute force and instinct, tackling, punching, using the environment as a weapon. They cut a path through the room. The squad leader saw them coming. He pulled a grenade from his belt. For the Aegis, he screamed. He pulled the pin. Time slowed down. Ash saw the grenade. He saw the terrified guests huddled under tables nearby. He saw Dawn peeking out from the kitchen. If that grenade went off, people would die. Ash didn't think. He didn't strategize. He lunged. No. Zoey screamed, reaching for him. Ash dove onto the squad leader, tackling him to the ground. He grabbed the hand holding the grenade and jammed it underneath the mercenary's own heavy Kevlar vest. Ash slammed his body weight on top of the man, burying his face in his shoulder. Thump. The explosion was muffled, contained by the mercenary's armor and Ash's body. Ash was thrown backward by the force of the concussive wave. He hit a pillar and crumpled. The squad leader was dead. The generator he was holding was shattered. The humming stopped. Silence. Then, a crackle of electricity. From beneath the overturned table where Ash lay, a yellow blur shot out. Pika. Choo. A thunderbolt the size of a tree trunk exploded into the room. It arced, branching out like a web of judgment. It hit every single standing mercenary. The smell of ozone filled the ballroom. The attackers convulsed and dropped, their electronics fried, their bodies paralyzed. Ash groaned, trying to sit up. His ears were ringing. His suit was shredded, his back burned from the proximity of the blast. Dawn was there instantly. She slid across the floor, falling to her knees beside him. Her hands were shaking as she checked him for shrapnel. "You idiot," she was crying, tears streaming down her face, ruining her makeup. "You suicidal idiot. You could have died. Had to. Stop the blast," Ash wheezed. Zoey was there too, her gun drawn, scanning the room for any movement. Finding none, she holstered it and grabbed Ash's other arm. "He's alive," Zoey said, though her voice was thick with emotion. "He's alive." Slowly, the guests began to emerge from hiding. They looked at the unconscious mercenaries. They looked at the shattered dome. And they looked at Ash. He was bleeding. His clothes were destroyed. He looked like he had been through a war zone. Dawn and Zoey helped him stand. He swayed, leaning heavily on them. The mayor stood up from behind a fallen buffet table. She looked at Ash with wide, terrified eyes. "You," she whispered. "You saved us." Ash spat a mouthful of blood onto the expensive marble floor. He looked around the room. He saw the fear, but he also saw the awe. They weren't looking at him like a politician anymore. They were looking at him like a force of nature. A camera crew, miraculously unharmed, crept forward. The red light was on. Live broadcast. Ash looked directly into the lens. He didn't wipe the blood off his face. He didn't try to fix his hair. "Vane," Ash rasped. The room went deadly quiet. "I know you're watching," Ash said. His voice was rough, broken, but it carried a terrifying authority. "You wanted to show them a monster. You wanted to show them violence." He stepped away from Dawn and Zoey, standing on his own 2 feet, swaying but upright. Pikachu climbed onto his shoulder, sparking dangerously. "You sent these men to kill these people just to get to me," Ash said. "You crossed the line." Ash leaned into the camera, his eyes burning with a cold, blue fire. "I am coming for you. No more politics. No more treaties. If you hurt one more person, if you touch one more Pokemon, I will bring the sky down on your head. He turned away from the camera. We're leaving, Ash said to his team. Dawn and Zoey flanked him immediately. The crowd parted instantly, giving them a wide berth. No one stopped them. No one asked for an autograph. As they walked out of the ruined ballroom, into the cold night air, Ash felt the fracture heal. The doubt was gone. The hesitation was gone. He wasn't a hero. He wasn't a villain. He was the king. And he was going to war. Chapter 4 End. Chapter 5 Echoes of the Celestica. The fog in Celestic Town didn't behave like weather. It didn't drift, it hovered, a heavy, suffocating blanket that smelled of wet slate and history. It muted the world, turning the ancient wooden shrine markers into looming ghosts. Ash sat on the porch of the elder's house, stripping the bandages from his chest. The bruises from the grenade impact had turned a kaleidoscope of violent purple and black, mapping the trauma across his ribs. Stop picking at it, Dawn's voice came from the doorway. She held a steaming basin of water and fresh linen. She had traded her ruined gala gown for heavy wool trousers and a thick knitted sweater she'd borrowed from Cynthia's grandmother. She looked tired, her eyes shadowed, but her hands were steady. It itches, Ash grunted, wincing as he stretched. That means it's healing, Dawn said, setting the basin down. She dipped a cloth into the water, wringing it out. Hold still. She wiped the dried blood from his shoulder. The water was hot, biting into the soreness. Ash watched her face. She was focused, her brow furrowed in concentration. It was the same look she used to get right before a contest appeal, total immersion in the task. We're fugitives, Dawn, Ash said quietly. You know that, right? The news is calling us terrorists. They say I brainwashed the gala guests. Dawn didn't look up. I know. They also said my dress was tacky because it had soot on it. I'm more offended by that. Ash cracked a smile, but it faded quickly. I dragged you into the mud. You and Zoey. You should be signing autographs, not patching up bullet wounds. Dawn stopped. She pressed the warm cloth against his heart, her palm flat against his chest. She looked up, her blue eyes fierce. You didn't drag us, Ash. We jumped. Remember? She leaned in, her voice dropping to a whisper. We chose the mud. Because the mud is where you are. Zoey materialized out of the fog at the edge of the porch. She was wiping slime off a combat knife. She wore a dark parka, her red hair tucked under a hood. Perimeter is clear, Zoey announced, stepping onto the wooden deck. But the local Murkrow are acting weird. They're not roosting. They're watching. Spies? Ash asked, tensing. Maybe. Or maybe they just know something bad is coming, Zoey said. She looked at Ash's chest. You look like a piece of tenderized meat. Thanks, Ash said. Professor Carolina is ready for us, Zoey gestured to the main house. She's been in the archives for 3 hours. She says she found the link. The inside of the elder's house smelled of burning sage and old paper. The walls were lined with books that predated the printing press, and artifacts that belonged in museums, if museums weren't run by the people trying to kill them. Professor Carolina, Cynthia's grandmother, stood over a massive table covered in maps and stone tablets. She looked frail, her hair a cloud of white, but her eyes were sharp, glittering with an intelligence that ran in the family. Sit, she commanded, not looking up. They sat. Ash kept his hand near his belt. He felt naked without Pikachu constantly on his shoulder. The electric mouse was resting in the back room, recovering from the massive discharge at the gala. Carolina pushed a stone tablet forward. It was cracked, the carvings worn by millennia of wind. Do you know what this is? She asked. It looks like the fresco in the Canal Ave library, Dawn ventured. The legend of the Lake Guardians. Older, Carolina rasped. This is from the original people. The ones who lived on the spear pillar before it was a ruin. It depicts the binding. She traced a finger over a jagged line carved into the stone. It showed a figure holding a chain, wrapping it around a dragon-like creature. The red chain, Ash said. A chill went down his spine. He remembered the events at the spear pillar years ago, Cyrus, the red light, the feeling of reality bending. Precisely, Carolina said. The red chain is not matter. It is spirit. It binds the dimensions. It forces the infinite to become finite. It tells the universe, you will obey. She pulled a data pad from under the tablet, a jarring clash of ancient and modern. On the screen was a schematic Zoey had stolen from the warehouse in Heart Home. This technology Vane is using, Carolina tapped the screen. These dampeners. They are synthetic replications of the red chain's frequency. He isn't just suppressing Pokemon abilities. He is severing their connection to the natural world. He is functionally lobotomizing them. Ash slammed his fist onto the table. Why? Why go that far? Because he is afraid, Carolina said, looking Ash in the eye. To men like Vane, Pokemon are chaos. They are variables he cannot control. A Charizard can burn a city. A Tyranitar can crush a mountain. And a champion. She paused. A champion who can bond with them, who can channel that chaos. That is a threat to the very concept of human order. She stood up, walking to a heavy iron safe in the corner. She spun the dial and pulled out a wrapped bundle. Vane isn't just building jammers, Ash. He is excavating the spear pillar because he needs the original source code. He wants the fragments of the original red chain that were shattered when Cyrus fell. She unwrapped the bundle. Inside was a jagged shard of red crystal. It pulsed with a dull, sickening light. If he reconstructs the chain, Carolina whispered, he won't just control the Pokemon. He will summon Arceus. And he will try to put a collar on God. The silence in the room was absolute. He wants to enslave Arceus, Zoey repeated, her voice flat. That's insane. The backlash would destroy the planet. He believes he can contain it, Carolina said. Hubris is the oldest sin. She pushed the red shard toward Ash. You need to go to the source. The signal tower on the northern ridge of Empty Coronet. That is where the primary broadcast is coming from. If my readings are correct, that is where he is testing the prototype of the reconstructed chain. Ash picked up the shard. It felt hot, vibrating against his palm. It felt like hate. We'll destroy it, Ash said. Be careful, Monarch, Carolina warned. The mountain is not empty. The Aegis has deployed their elite units. And, there are things in the mist that are neither Pokemon nor human. The trek up into Coronet was a descent into purgatory. The tree line gave way to jagged rock and ice. The air grew thin, biting the lungs. But the worst part was the silence. Usually, Coronet was alive, Geodudes rolling, Zubats screeching, the wind howling. Now, there was nothing. The wild Pokemon had fled or gone deep underground. The mountain felt dead. They made camp in a shallow cave as night fell. The wind whipped past the entrance, carrying snow that stung like needles. Ash built a small fire, shielding it with rocks to keep the light minimal. Zoey set up tripwires at the entrance, her movements efficient and jerky. Dawn was melting snow in a tin cup for tea. They sat huddled together for warmth. The physical exhaustion was setting in. Ash stared into the flames. I used to love this mountain, he murmured. I caught Gibble here. I evolved Nosepass here. It was an adventure. It's still an adventure, Dawn said softly, handing him the tea. Just a darker one. Ash took a sip. He looked at Dawn. In the flickering firelight, she looked ethereal, the shadows dancing across her cheekbones. He looked at Zoey, who was watching the cave mouth, her profile sharp and intense. "Come here," Ash said to Zoey. Zoey turned. "I'm on watch." "The sensors will catch anything," Ash said. "Come here. Please." Zoey hesitated, then sighed and crawled over. She sat on his left, Dawn on his right. Ash put his arms around them, pulling them into him. It wasn't just for warmth. He needed to feel them. He needed to know that in this dead world, something was still alive. "I'm scared," Ash admitted. It was the first time he had said it aloud. Dawn rested her head on his shoulder. "Good. If you weren't scared, you'd be stupid." "We're going to fight God killers tomorrow," Ash whispered. "I don't know if I can protect you." Zoey reached across his chest, taking his hand and intertwining her fingers with his. Her grip was iron strong. "You don't get it, do you?" Zoey murmured into his neck. "We don't need you to protect us. We need you to lead us. We are the sword and the shield, Ash. You are the will." She turned her head, kissing his jawline. It was slow, deliberate. "You focus on the target. We keep the ghosts off your back." Dawn shifted, turning to face him. She cupped his face in her hands. Her thumbs traced the scars on his cheeks. "We're here, Ash," Dawn whispered. "Nowhere else." She kissed him. It was deep, desperate, and full of promises they might not live to keep. Ash kissed her back, pouring all his fear and his gratitude into the contact. Zoey didn't pull away. She leaned in, her forehead pressing against Ash's temple, her hand finding the back of Dawn's neck. It was a tangle of limbs and emotions, a desperate affirmation of life in the face of the void. For a moment, the cold, the aegis, and the red light didn't exist. There was only the fire, the smell of vanilla and ozone, and the heartbeat of the triad. Then, Pikachu's ears twitched. The little mouse, who had been sleeping near the fire, sat bolt upright. His fur stood on end. He didn't spark, he shivered. "Hi," Pikachu whispered. Zoey pulled away instantly, her gun in her hand. "What is it?" Ash grabbed the aura within him, trying to sense the threat. Nothing. That was the problem. There was a void moving toward them. A blank spot in the world where life should be. "Something's here," Ash hissed, kicking snow over the fire to douse it. Darkness swallowed the cave. Click. Whir. The sound was mechanical, wet, and heavy. It came from the darkness outside. "Thermal goggles," Zoey whispered, pulling hers down. She gasped. "What?" Dawn asked, her voice barely a breath. It doesn't have a heat signature," Zoey said, her voice trembling. "But it's huge." A heavy footstep crunched on the scree outside. Then another. Ash stood up, his hand hovering over Lucario's ball. "Lucario won't work," he realized. "If that thing is a dampener." "We fight manually," Zoey said, racking the slide of her pistol. A roar shattered the night. It wasn't a Pokémon roar. It was a synthesized scream, a metallic screech that sounded like a hard drive crashing mixed with a dying animal. A massive shape lunged into the cave entrance. It was a nightmare. It stood on 4 legs, bulky and armored in gray plating. A massive, axe-like fin protruded from its head. But the terrifying part was the neck, thick, fleshy, and bolted with control collars. "Type, null," Ash breathed. He had read the files from Alola, Gladion's partner. But this wasn't Silvally. This was raw. Crude. Tubes pumped glowing green fluid into its muscles. Its eyes were covered by a heavy iron helmet. And there were 3 of them. "Kill target," a digitized voice spoke from the lead beast's collar. The first beast charged. "Scatter." Ash yelled. They dove. The beast smashed into the back wall of the cave, shattering the rock. The force of the impact shook the ground. Zoey rolled to her feet and fired 3 rounds at the creature's flank. The bullets sparked off the armor plating. The beast didn't even flinch. "It's armored!" Zoey yelled. "Dawn, get behind it!" Ash commanded. Ash ran at the beast. He didn't have a weapon. He had a plan. The beast swiped at him with a claw the size of a shovel. Ash slid underneath, feeling the wind of the blow ruffle his hair. He grabbed the thick cabling running along the beast's underbelly. He yanked. The cable held. It was reinforced. The beast bucked, kicking Ash into the wall. Ash hit hard, the wind knocked out of him. He tasted blood. The second beast cornered Dawn. It opened its jaws, and a beam of tri-attack energy began to charge. Piplup, whirlpool. Dawn screamed, throwing a ball. Piplup materialized. But the dampening field coming from the beasts was intense. Piplup looked sluggish. The whirlpool formed, but it was weak, a splash rather than a torrent. The beast fired. The energy blast hit the water, creating a steam explosion. Dawn was thrown back, coughing. "They have internal dampeners." Dawn choked out. "We can't use specials. Physical attacks only." Ash roared, scrambling up. "Pikachu, Iron Tail. Full power." Pikachu leaped from Ash's shoulder. He couldn't use electricity, but he could still hit. His tail glowed a dull metallic gray. He spun, slamming his tail into the helmet of the first beast. Clang! The helmet dented. The beast stumbled. "The helmet!" Zoey yelled. "It's the control unit. Break the helmet." "Zoey, cover fire on the eyes." Ash ordered. Zoey adjusted her aim. She fired at the slit in the helmet. The bullet struck the lens. The beast shrieked, thrashing blindly. Ash saw his opening. Lucario. He threw the ball. Lucario emerged, already wincing from the pressure. Bone Rush. Use it as a pry bar. Ash pointed at the damaged helmet. Lucario didn't hesitate. He formed the bone staff, flickering and unstable, and jammed it into the crack Pikachu had made. Lucario roared, muscles bulging as he leveraged the staff. Ash jumped in, grabbing the staff alongside Lucario. Human and Pokemon, pulling together. "Break!" Ash screamed. Snap! The heavy iron helmet split open. Underneath, the beast's face was a horror show of cybernetics and scarred flesh. But its eyes, its real eyes, were wild, terrified. With the helmet broken, the dampening field around it collapsed. The beast looked at Ash. It stopped fighting. It whimpered. "It's in pain," Ash realized. He lowered his hands. "They're torturing it to make it fight." The other 2 beasts paused, sensing the change in their pack mate. Suddenly, a red laser dot appeared on the exposed head of the freed beast. "Down!" Ash tackled Lucario. Thwip! A sniper round took the beast in the head. It collapsed instantly, dead before it hit the ground. "They're terminating the failed units." Zoey screamed, looking toward the ridge outside. "Snipers! We're sitting ducks in here." Dawn yelled. Ash looked at the dead chimera. He felt a cold rage that eclipsed anything he had felt before. Vane wasn't just using machines. He was creating life just to enslave and discard it. "Retreat to the ruins," Ash ordered. "Into the fog. Use the weather." They scrambled out of the cave, diving into the snow and mist. Bullets whizzed past them, kicking up puffs of ice. They ran blindly up the slope, the 2 remaining beasts crashing through the trees behind them. "Where are we going?" Dawn panted, slipping on the ice. "The ruins," Ash said, hauling her up. "Carolina said there's an entrance to the underground network." We have to find it. They reached a plateau of crumbling stone pillars. The fog was so thick here they could barely see 5 feet ahead. The beasts were closing in. The mechanical clicker was right behind them. Dead end. Zoey yelled. Ahead was a sheer cliff face. Ash scanned the rock. He saw a carving, a symbol of Dialga. Time, Ash whispered. He remembered the lore. Cynthia said, when the path is lost, look to the past. He grabbed the red shard Carolina had given him from his pocket. He pressed it against the carving. The rock hissed. A hidden mechanism, dormant for centuries, groaned. A section of the cliff slid back, revealing a dark tunnel. Inside. Now. They threw themselves into the tunnel. The remaining beasts lunged. Ash grabbed a loose stone from the floor and jammed it into the gear mechanism of the door. The stone door slammed shut, crushing the claw of the lead beast as it tried to follow. A muffled screech echoed from the other side. Then, silence. They were in the dark. The air was stale, dead. Ash clicked on his flashlight. The beam cut through the dust. They were in a hallway lined with statues. But the statues weren't of humans. They were of Pokemon, bowing. We're in the bowels of the mountain, Zoey whispered, her voice echoing. Ash looked at the path ahead. It led down, deep into the earth. Vane is down there, Ash said. He wiped the sweat and blood from his face. And he has no idea what he's woken up. Ash checked his partners. Dawn was shivering, clutching her arm. Zoey was reloading her magazine, her face grim. We don't stop, Ash said. Not until I burn this entire facility to the ground. He started walking into the dark. Dawn and Zoey fell in step beside him. The hunt was on. Chapter 5 End. Chapter 6, The Summit of Traitors. The darkness of the catacombs was absolute, a heavy, suffocating weight that pressed against the eardrums. The air was stale, recycled for millennia, tasting of dry earth and the metallic tang of ancient, dormant machinery. Ash moved by feel, his hand trailing along the rough basalt wall. The flashlight beam was a narrow needle of light, cutting through the dust motes, revealing glimpses of the past, statues of Dialga with faces worn smooth by time, carvings of the lake guardians shattered by tectonic shifts. Stop, Zoey hissed. The command was barely a breath. Ash froze instantly, his boots making no sound on the stone floor. Dawn bumped into his back, her hand instinctively gripping his jacket. What is it? Dawn whispered. Airflow, Zoey said. She moved past Ash, crouching low. She held up a wet finger. The draft changed. It's not coming from the depths anymore. It's coming from above. And it smells like. She sniffed. Coffee. Coffee? Ash frowned. We're 3 miles under the peak. Vane, Zoey said, standing up and holstering her pistol. She pointed her flashlight upward. 20 feet above them, a metal grate was set into the natural rock ceiling. It wasn't ancient. It was titanium, stamped with a serial number. We're directly underneath them, Ash realized. The facility isn't just on the ridge. It goes down. Zoey pulled a grapple gun from her belt, a high-tensile fibrowire launcher she'd swiped from the mercenary cache in Heart Home. She fired. The hook latched silently onto the grate. I'm going up to look, she said. Kill the lights. She ascended into the gloom. Ash and Dawn waited in the dark, the silence stretching tight. Ash could feel Dawn's heartbeat against his arm. She was trembling, not from cold, but from the adrenaline crash. We're going to walk into a room full of people who want us dead, Dawn whispered. Not all of them, Ash said. He reached out, finding her hand in the dark. Just Vane. The others, they're scared. They're confused. They're leaders, Ash. They shouldn't be confused. Fear makes people stupid, Ash said simply. It's my job to remind them to be brave. Zoey slid back down the wire, landing softly. Even in the dark, Ash could feel her tension. You're not going to believe this, she murmured. It's not a lab up there. It's an auditorium. A summit. A summit? Vane has the entire Sinnoh League leadership up there. The gym leaders, the Elite Four, the corporate board. He's giving a speech. Ash's jaw tightened. He's consolidating power. He's convinced them I'm the villain, and he's getting them to sign off on the purge. Then we have to stop him, Dawn said. If we breach that grate, Zoey warned, we are dropping into the middle of the most heavily guarded room on the planet. And the dampeners will be active. No Pokemon. Ash checked his knuckles. They were bruised, scabbed over from the fight in the warehouse. He didn't care. I don't need a Pokemon to speak, Ash said. And I don't need one to fight Vane. Then let's crash the party, Zoey smirked. The Aegis Secure Command Center, constructed rapidly over the last 6 months under the guise of a mining operation, was a marvel of fascist architecture. Cold steel, harsh lighting, and a massive glass wall overlooking the swirling clouds of the spear pillar. Inside the central atrium, 40 of the most powerful people in Sinnoh sat in tiered seating. Rourke looked uncomfortable in his suit, fidgeting with his tie. Gardenia was pale, staring at the floor. Faulkner sat with his arms crossed, his eyes narrowed, watching the perimeter guards with open suspicion. Flint was absent, hospitalized after the exhibition match. On the stage, director Silas Vane stood before a podium. Behind him, a massive screen displayed a rotating 3D map of the region, with red zones marking terrorist activity. We must face the uncomfortable truth, Vane said, his voice smooth, amplified by the acoustics of the room. The system of the League relies on the stability of the champion. When the champion becomes erratic, the system collapses. He clicked a remote. The screen changed to the footage of the Hart Home warehouse, edited to show Ash's violence, but cutting out the mercenaries' aggression. Ash Ketchum is a hero, Vane continued, his tone sympathetic. We all loved him. But the pressure of the throne broke him. He has allied himself with radicals. He is attacking infrastructure. He is a danger to himself and the region. So what do you propose, Director? Lucian of the Elite Four asked, adjusting his glasses. We cannot simply remove a champion without a battle. It is against the Charter. The Charter was written for a time of peace, Vane said, gripping the podium. We are at war. I propose the implementation of the Aegis Protocols. Temporary martial law. The suspension of independent trainer licenses until the threat is neutralized. And the authorization to use lethal force against the rogue monarch. A murmur of dissent rippled through the room. Lethal force? Crasher Wake stood up, his massive frame blocking the view of 3 people behind him. You're talking about a kid. A kid who saved the world more times than you've had hot dinners. A kid who is currently wielding a weapon of mass destruction. Vane shouted back, pointing at the screen. He has the loyalty of legendaries. If he decides to turn on us, who stops him? You, Wake. With a floatzel. Vane leaned forward, his eyes cold. We need order. And I am the only one offering it. You're not offering order, a voice rang out from above. You're offering a cage. Vane froze. Every head in the room snapped upward. Clang. The ventilation grate in the center of the ceiling exploded downward. 3 figures dropped 20 feet. They landed in a crouch in the center of the aisle, dust billowing around them. Ash Ketchum stood up slowly. He looked like a nightmare. His clothes were torn, stained with cave mud and dried blood. He hadn't shaved in days. But his eyes, those burning brown eyes, swept the room with a terrifying clarity. Dawn and Zoey flanked him, weapons drawn, Dawn with her baton, Zoey with her pistol aimed directly at Vane's head. Ash! Rourke gasped. Security guards, Aegis mercenaries, swarmed from the side doors, rifles raised. Hold fire! Vane ordered, holding up a hand. He smiled. It was the smile of a man who had just drawn a royal flush. Well, well. The monarch returns to his court. Get away from the podium, Vane, Ash said, his voice low but carrying to the back of the room. Tell them what you're really doing here. Tell them about the red chain. Vane chuckled. Paranoia. See? He is delusional. I saw the prototypes, Ash said, stepping forward. The gym leaders shrank back, unsure whether to support him or fear him. I saw the type, null beasts you slaughtered in the woods. I know you're trying to enslave Arceus. The room went deadly silent. Enslave? Arceus? Fantina whispered, her hand going to her mouth. Vane's face hardened. He tapped a command on his podium. A low, throbbing hum filled the room. The air grew heavy. I am trying to save humanity from its dependence on monsters, Vane said, his voice dropping the facade of politeness. And you, Ash Ketchum, are the biggest monster of them all. Vane pressed a red button. Execute Order 66, Vane whispered, a mockery of old legends. Kill them. Shields. Zoey screamed. The mercenaries opened fire. But they didn't fire at Ash. They fired into the air, creating panic. Then, the heavy blast doors slammed shut, sealing the room. The hum intensified. My Pokémon! Maylene cried, grabbing at her belt. The balls won't open. It's a dampener field. Faulkner shouted, smashing a fist against his armrest. He's neutralized us. Vane stepped back as a wall of reinforced glass rose around the stage, sealing him off from the chaos. The era of the trainer is over. The era of the Aegis begins. 20 mercenaries, armed with shock batons and riot shields, advanced on the gym leaders. They're going to massacre the leadership, Dawn realized. If they kill them, Vane replaces them with his own puppets. Ash looked at the advancing troops. He looked at his friends, Rourke, Maylene, Wake, helpless without their partners. They forgot one thing, Ash growled. He ripped off his tattered jacket, revealing the black t-shirt underneath. He cracked his neck. We don't need Pokémon to fight. Ash lunged. He didn't run away. He ran directly into the phalanx of mercenaries. Formation, the lead guard yelled. Ash hit the riot shield with a flying knee. The impact was like a car crash. The guard crumbled, the shield flying backward. Ash didn't stop. He was a whirlwind of violence. He ducked a baton swing, grabbed the attacker's arm, and used the man's own momentum to throw him into the next guard. Gym leaders. Ash roared, his voice cutting through the panic. Fight back. You are the strongest humans in Sinnoh. Act like it. His voice broke the spell of fear. Crasher Wake roared. The massive wrestler didn't need a floatzel. He grabbed a mercenary by the vest and literally threw him across the room into the wall. For the Great Marsh. Wake bellowed. Maylene, the fighting prodigy, vaulted over a row of seats. She landed in a perfect stance. A guard swung at her. She parried, snapped a kick to his ribs, and dropped him. Faulkner. Rourke. Ash yelled, punching a guard in the face. Secure the flank. Dawn, Zoey, find the generator. On it. Zoey yelled. The room descended into a chaotic brawl. It was brutal. These weren't Pokémon attacks, there were no flashy lights, no energy beams. Just the sound of fists hitting meat, bones breaking, and men screaming. Dawn moved like a dancer through the fray. She used her collapsible baton to strike precision points, knees, elbows, throats. She wasn't strong, but she was fast. She covered Maylene's back, tripping a guard who was about to blindside the young leader. Zoey was a ghost. She moved along the upper tier, taking shots with her pistol, not to kill, but to disable. She shot out the lights, plunging the upper sections into darkness, confusing the mercenaries. But there were too many of them. And more were pouring in. Ash was in the center of the kill zone. 3 guards were on him. One managed to land a shock baton on Ash's shoulder. The electricity coursed through him. Ash gritted his teeth, seizing the baton with his bare hand. He ignored the pain. He ripped it from the guard's grip and swung it back, cracking the man's helmet. "Is that all you got?" Ash screamed at the glass wall where Vane stood watching. Vane looked down, his expression twisting into a scowl. "Persistent insect." Vane spoke into a comms unit. "Activate the Titan." The floor near the stage opened. A platform rose. Standing on it was not a human, and not a Pokemon. It was a suit of power armor. Massive, 10 feet tall, powered by a glowing red core, a synthetic red chain fragment. Inside the suit was the captain of the Aegis Guard. Target locked, the suit amplified the pilot's voice. The Titan stepped off the platform. The floor shook. It raised a cannon arm. "Move!" Ash tackled Gardenia out of the way. Boom! A pulse of red energy slammed into the seats where they had been standing, vaporizing the metal. "It's using the red chain energy as a weapon." Zoey shouted from the balcony. "Ash, you can't fight that." "I have to." Ash scrambled up. The Titan turned toward him. The cannon whined, charging again. "Ash!" Dawn screamed. Ash looked around. He saw the despair returning to the gym leaders' faces. They couldn't fight a tank. Ash closed his eyes for a split second. He reached deep inside himself. The dampener field was suppressing the connection to his Pokemon, suppressing his aura. But aura wasn't magic. It was life force. And Vane couldn't suppress life without killing it. "Lucario," Ash thought, projecting the thought with every ounce of his will. "I know you can hear me. I know you're angry." In the ball on his belt, there was a faint vibration. Ash opened his eyes. They weren't brown anymore. They were glowing a faint, defiant blue. "Cover me!" Ash yelled to the gym leaders. "You heard the monarch." Faulkner shouted. "Everyone! Pile on!" Faulkner, Wake, Rourke, and Maylene charged the Titan. They couldn't hurt it, but they could distract it. Wake grabbed the Titan's leg, straining his massive muscles to hold it in place. Maylene kicked the knee joint. "Get off," the pilot roared, trying to shake them. Ash sprinted. He didn't run at the Titan. He ran at the glass wall behind it. The wall protecting the generator, and Vane. He vaulted off a row of seats, launching himself into the air. The dampener field screamed in his head, a high-pitched agony. He pushed through it. He gathered the energy in his fist. It wasn't an aura sphere. It was just a punch. But it was a punch backed by the weight of a champion. Break! Ash's fist connected with the reinforced glass. Crack! A spiderweb fracture appeared. Ash fell back, landing hard. His hand was broken. He could feel the bones grinding. He cracked it. Dawn yelled. "Hit it again." The Titan threw Wake across the room. It turned its cannon on Ash. "Goodbye, Ketchum," the pilot sneered. The cannon fired. Ash didn't move. He stared at the beam. Suddenly, a blur of red and white intercepted the blast. A pokeball? No. It was a shield. Zoey had leaped from the balcony, swinging on her grapple wire. She landed in front of Ash, deploying a hard-light shield projector she had stolen from the warehouse. The red beam hit the shield. The shield buckled, sparking. "Zoey!" Ash yelled. "Go!" Zoey screamed, her heels digging into the floor as the energy pushed her back. "Finish it!" Ash scrambled up. He looked at the cracked glass. He couldn't punch it again. His hand was useless. He looked at his belt. "Pikachu." "Buddy," Ash whispered. "I need you. Just 1 second. Just one spark." He grabbed Pikachu off his shoulder and threw him. Not at the glass, but at the crack. Iron tail. Pikachu flew through the air. The dampener field drained him, making him heavy, weak. But Pikachu saw Ash's broken hand. He saw Zoey holding the line. He saw Dawn fighting off 3 guards with a baton. Pikachu screamed. His tail didn't glow. It hardened. He hit the crack like a bullet. Shatter. The glass wall exploded inward. Pikachu tumbled into the control room, landing on the console. "No!" Vayne shouted, pulling a gun. Pikachu looked at the generator controls. He bit down on the main power cable. ZZZZZRT. He poured his own bioelectricity into the system. It wasn't an attack, it was a short circuit. The generator overloaded. Boom. The humming stopped. The red lights died. The dampener field vanished. Instantaneously, the room changed. The air rushed back in. Ash felt the connection snap back into place. It was like breathing after drowning. "Now!" Ash roared. 40 Pokeballs opened at once. Lux Ray, Thunder Fawn. Faulkner screamed. Floatzel, Hydro Pump. Wake bellowed. Lucario. Rose Raid. Garchomp. The room filled with white light. The mercenaries looked around, terrified, as a literal army of high-level Pokémon materialized. "It's over," Vayne whispered, backing away. Ash stood up. His hand was throbbing, but he didn't feel it. Lucario was beside him instantly, eyes glowing with murder. "Lucario," Ash said, pointing at the Titan suit. "Scrap it." Lucario vanished. Clang crunch. The Titan suit fell apart as Lucario moved through it with extreme speed, dismantling the joints. The pilot was ripped out and tossed aside. Ash walked up the steps to the shattered control room. Vayne was backing toward the rear exit. Ash stepped over the debris. Pikachu hopped onto his good shoulder, sparks flying from his cheeks. "You lose," Ash said. Vayne stopped. He looked at Ash, then at the chaotic battle below where the gym leaders were mopping up the Aegis forces. Vayne smiled. A cold, bitter smile. "Do I?" Vayne asked. He reached into his jacket. Ash tensed. "Don't do it." Vayne pulled out a remote. "The dampener was just the lock, Ash," Vayne said softly. "The facility itself is the key." He pressed the button. A deep, seismic rumble shook the mountain. The floor beneath them groaned. "What did you do?" Ash demanded. "I opened the door," Vayne said. "Not to the spear pillar. But to the other side." The glass wall overlooking the outside world shattered completely. Outside, the sky had turned purple. Black clouds were swirling into a vortex. Gravity seemed to twist. A roar echoed from the sky. A roar that sounded like reality tearing apart. "Giratina. Welcome to the distortion world," Vayne laughed. The gravity in the room shifted. Up became down. Debris began to float. Vayne stepped backward, and fell up into the sky. "He's escaping." Dawn yelled, running up the stairs. "He's pulling the mountain into the distortion world." Ash realized, grabbing a railing as the room tilted 90 degrees. Ash! Zoey shouted, holding onto a pillar. The structure is collapsing. Ash looked at Vane, who was floating away into the purple void, laughing. Ash looked at his partners. Get the leaders out. Ash ordered. Evacuate the facility. Where are you going? Dawn screamed. Ash looked at the void. I'm going to finish this. Ash recalled Lucario. He grabbed Pikachu. And he jumped. Into the sky. Into the purple nightmare. Following Vane. Ash. Dawn and Zoey screamed in unison. But he was gone, swallowed by the distortion. Chapter 6 End. Chapter 7, The Bleeding World. The sensation wasn't falling. Falling implies a direction, down. It implies gravity, a constant, a rule. This was unmaking. Ash Ketchum tumbled through a kaleidoscope of violet fog and shattered physics. One moment, the wind was screaming past his ears, the next, he was floating in a vacuum of absolute silence. His stomach lurched into his throat, then dropped to his boots. He flailed, his hand grasping for purchase on nothing. Above him, or what he assumed was above, the jagged tear in reality that led back to M. Coronet was shrinking, a bright, jagged scar on a sky that looked like bruised meat. Pikachu. Ash gagged, the air tasting of copper and ozone. Pika. The cry came from below. Ash twisted his body, fighting the nausea. He saw a floating island of rock, a chunk of the spear pillar that had been dragged in with them, drifting in the void. Pikachu was scrambling for a hold on a twisted root. Ash tucked his knees to his chest and kicked against the empty air. In the distortion world, will mattered more than aerodynamics. He willed himself toward the rock. Gravity caught him with a brutal yank. He slammed onto the stone surface, rolling to absorb the impact. He slid toward the edge, an edge that poured a waterfall of dust upward into a black abyss. He dug his fingers into the dirt, stopping his slide inches from the drop. I got you. Ash lunged, grabbing Pikachu by the scruff of his neck just as the mouse lost his grip. He hauled his partner up, collapsing onto his back. They both lay there, chests heaving, staring up at a sky that swirled with impossible geometry. Floating continents drifted like icebergs in a dark sea. A waterfall the size of an ocean poured from nowhere, vanishing into nowhere. It was quiet. Not the silence of a library, but the silence of a grave. We're not in Sinnoh anymore, buddy, Ash whispered. Pikachu sat up, ears flattened, shivering. He sparked, but the electricity was sluggish, the yellow arcs turning a sickly green before fading. The physics of this place hated energy. Ash sat up, groaning. His broken hand throbbed, a dull, fiery ache wrapped in adrenaline. He cradled it against his chest. Vane, Ash hissed. He scanned the horizon. The landscape was a mess of floating platforms and twisted ruins. In the distance, Ash saw a flicker of artificial light, a blue thruster trail cutting through the gloom. Vane was moving. He had a propulsion system. He was heading deeper into the void. Ash staggered to his feet. The gravity here was light, maybe half of Earth's, but it shifted randomly. We have to move, Ash said, his voice sounding flat in the thin air. If he finds Giratina before we do. He reached for a pokeball. Charizard, Ash croaked. I need wings. He threw the ball. The red light emerged, but it didn't form the dragon immediately. It swirled, struggling against the dimension's pressure, before finally coalescing into the massive orange form. Charizard roared, a sound of defiance, but immediately stumbled, his wings flaring to keep balance as the gravity shifted. I know, Ash said, resting his good hand on the dragon's snout. It's wrong here. The air is wrong. But I need you to fly. Charizard snorted, smoke curling from his nostrils. He looked at Ash, then at the distant blue light. He nodded. Ash climbed onto the dragon's back. Let's hunt. The summit of Coronet Dawn Berlitz stood amidst the apocalypse. The command center was gone, half of it sheared off and sucked into the portal. The remaining floor was tilted at a precarious 30-degree angle. The sky above Coronet wasn't just storming, it was cracking. Spiderwebs of purple light fractured the atmosphere, leaking the distortion into the real world. The noise was deafening. The mountain was groaning, the tectonic plates grinding together. Report. Dawn screamed over the wind. She stood near the edge of the ruin, her baton still in hand, her hair whipped into a frenzy. Faulkner scrambled up the slanted floor, clutching a bleeding arm. The facility is unstable. The structural integrity is at 20%. If we don't evacuate, this whole peak slides into the crater. What about the Aegis forces? Dawn demanded. They're routing, Rourke shouted from below, where his Rampardos was holding up a collapsing support beam. They lost their leader, they lost the Titan. They're running for the transports. Dawn looked at the portal swirling above them. Ash was in there. Every instinct in her body screamed at her to jump. To follow him. To be with him in the dark. But she looked at the terrified gym leaders. She looked at the horizon, where she could see the distortion spreading toward Eterna City. The clouds were twisting into funnels. Ash had gone to fight the king. She had to save the kingdom. Zoey. Dawn yelled. Zoey appeared from the shadows of a broken doorway. She was reloading her pistol, her face smeared with soot. She looked at the portal, then at Dawn. The unspoken conversation passed between them in a heartbeat. He's gone. We're here. Secure the launch pad, Dawn ordered, her voice turning into the steel of the Queen of Hearts. We need those Aegis transports. Our own choppers can't fly in this turbulence. The mercenaries won't give them up, Zoey warned. Take them, Dawn said cold. Faulkner, get the wounded to the south ridge. Maylene, Wake, you're the heavy lifters. Clear the debris blocking the exit. Move. The gym leaders hesitated for a fraction of a second. They were powerful, independent trainers. They weren't used to taking orders from a coordinator. Dawn slammed her baton against a metal railing. Clang. Did I stutter? She roared. Ash isn't here. I am. Do you want to die on this rock, or do you want to save your people? Move. They moved. Zoey, with me, Dawn said, turning toward the hangar bay. We're hijacking a dropship. The hangar bay. The Aegis mercenaries were in a panic. The discipline was gone. Men were shoving each other, trying to board the 3 remaining VTOL dropships. Get us out of here, a soldier screamed at a pilot. The mountain is falling. Engines are stalling. The atmospheric pressure is dropping. Dawn and Zoey sprinted onto the catwalk overlooking the bay. Hey! Zoey shouted. The mercenaries looked up. Glacian, Miss Magius. Zoey threw 2 balls. Shadow Ball and Icy Wind. Clear the deck. The attacks rained down. The icy wind froze the ground, turning the landing pad into a skating rink. The mercenaries slipped and fell. The shadow balls exploded near the ships, sending men scrambling for cover. You want a ride? Dawn yelled, vaulting over the railing and landing in a crouch. Drop your weapons. Now. Kill them, a squad leader shouted, raising his rifle. Dawn didn't flinch. Toad kiss. Aura sphere. Her toad kiss materialized, sweeping low. The sphere of energy blasted the rifle out of the man's hands. Zoey landed beside Dawn, her gun raised. The Monarch is gone, Zoey announced, her voice echoing in the hangar. Vane is gone. You are fighting for a ghost. Surrender, and we get you off this mountain. Keep fighting, and we leave you to the void. The mercenaries looked at the cracking sky outside the hangar doors. They looked at the fierce determination in the eyes of the two women. One by one, the rifles clattered to the floor. "Get them aboard," Dawn commanded, pointing to the gym leaders who were now pouring into the bay with the wounded. "Pilots, fire up the engines. We're going to Heart Home." As the engines whined to life, Dawn ran to the open ramp of the lead ship. She looked back at the swirling portal one last time. "Come back to me," she whispered. "You promised." The distortion whirled. Ash felt sick. The flight was a nightmare. Charizard was struggling to generate lift in air that didn't exist. They were gliding more than flying, riding thermal currents of antimatter. Ahead, the geography twisted. A forest of giant, floating kelp made of stone blocked their path. "Bank left!" Ash yelled. Charizard banked, dodging a floating boulder. "There!" Ash pointed. Vayne was ahead. He was wearing a personal flight pack, a high-tech harness with thrusters. He landed on a massive, inverted pyramid that floated in the center of the void. On top of the pyramid, or bottom, depending on perspective, was a temple. It looked like the ruins of the spear pillar, but mirrored. Ash recalled Charizard as they neared the platform. "Rest, buddy. I got this." He leaped from the dragon's back, falling toward the pyramid. He landed in a roll, coming up to his feet. Vayne was standing by a central altar. He was typing frantically on a holographic interface projected from his wrist. "It's not enough," Vayne was muttering. "The readings, the instability." "Vayne!" Ash shouted. The director spun around. He looked unhinged. His glasses were gone, his hair wild. But he was smiling. "You followed me," Vayne laughed. "Of course you did. The hero complex. It's a disease, Ash." "Shut it down," Ash said, walking forward. The gravity here was heavy, pulling at his bones. "You're tearing the world apart. I can feel it. Sinnoh is bleeding. Let it bleed." Vayne screamed. "Don't you see? This place, this is the reboot. Giratina isn't just a Pokemon. It's the hard drive of reality. If I inject the red chain code here, I don't just control the Pokemon. I rewrite the laws of physics. I can create a world where we are the gods." "You're not a god," Ash said, clenching his fists. "You're just a man who's scared of what he can't control." "And you?" Vayne sneered. "You think you're in control? Look around you." Vayne pressed a button on his wrist. The temple shook. From the shadows of the pillars, shapes emerged. They weren't Pokemon. They were shadows. Manifestations of the distortion world's defense mechanism. Inky, shapeless blobs with glowing red eyes. "The antibodies," Vayne grinned. "This world rejects foreign matter. It wants to eat us, Ash. But I have the code. You don't." The shadows lunged at Ash. "Pikachu, Thunderbolt." Pikachu unleashed a blast. The electricity hit the shadows, but they absorbed it. They grew larger. Energy attacks feed them. Vayne laughed. One of the shadows lashed out, a tentacle of darkness striking Ash in the chest. It felt like being hit by a freezer truck. The cold burned. Ash flew back, skidding across the stone. "Ash!" Pikachu cried, running to him. Ash gasped, trying to breathe. The cold was spreading through his veins. "You can't fight the void with power," Vayne lectured, turning back to the altar. "You need authority." Ash struggled to his knees. He looked at the shadows closing in. "You can't fight the void with power." Ash closed his eyes. He thought of the bond. Not the power of the bond, but the feeling. The empathy. He stood up. He lowered his hands. "Stop," Ash said. He didn't shout. He projected his aura. But he didn't project it as a weapon. He projected it as a presence. He projected his intent: I am not an enemy. I am a guest. The shadows paused. They swirled, confused. Ash walked through them. They parted like smoke. Vane turned around, his eyes widening. What? How? I don't try to conquer the world, Vane, Ash said, stepping onto the altar. I live in it. Ash grabbed Vane by the collar of his flight suit. We're going home. No. Vane shrieked. He pulled a device from his belt, a detonator. If I can't rule it, I'll delete it. He pressed the button. Beneath them, the pyramid groaned. A massive beam of red light shot up from the altar, straight into the purple sky. What did you do? Ash yelled, shaking him. I called him, Vane whispered, his eyes wide with terrified ecstasy. I called the Reaper. A roar shook the very fabric of existence. From the abyss below, a shape rose. It was titanic. 6 ghostly wings, red spikes, a face of golden armor. Giratina. But it wasn't the Giratina Ash knew. Its eyes were glowing red, the color of the chain. It was in pain. It was thrashing, its screams tearing holes in the dimension. It's berserk, Ash breathed. The red chain code was overriding the legendary's mind. Giratina looked down at the pyramid. It opened its maw. A ball of blue fire, will-o-wisp, but amplified 1,000 times, formed. It's going to vaporize us, Vane realized, the color draining from his face. Ash looked at the god. He looked at Vane. He couldn't fight Giratina. Not here. Not like this. Pikachu, on my shoulder. Ash ordered. He grabbed Vane with one hand. He grabbed a pokeball with the other. Staraptor. Ash yelled. Get us out of here. He threw the ball. The bird materialized, screeching. Ash jumped off the pyramid, dragging Vane with him, landing on Staraptor's back just as the blue fire incinerated the altar where they had been standing. The shockwave sent them spinning into the dark. Eterna City. The sky over Eterna was purple. Gravity was failing. Cars were floating off the streets, crashing into the sides of buildings. In the town square, panicked civilians were clinging to lampposts. Help! My baby, a woman screamed as a stroller began to drift upward. A vine of green energy shot out, grabbing the stroller and pulling it down to safety. I got it. Gardenia yelled, her rose raid anchoring the vine. Dawn jumped out of the lead transport ship as it touched down in the park. The wind was ferocious. Situation report. Dawn yelled into her comms. It's global, Zoe's voice came back from the cockpit. Veilstone, Snowpoint, Canal Ave. The distortion is leaking everywhere. The laws of physics are breaking down. Dawn looked up at the statue of Dialga and Palkia in the square. It was twisting, the metal warping like wax. Cynthia. Dawn tapped her earpiece. Are you there? I'm here, Dawn. Cynthia's voice was calm, but strained. I'm at the Canal Ave library. The readings are off the charts. The dimensions are merging. If this continues for another hour, the Sinnoh region will cease to exist. It will be pulled into the distortion world. How do we stop it? Dawn asked, helping a child into the transport. We can't, Cynthia said. Only the anchor can stop it. Giratina is the anchor. Someone has to calm Giratina. Dawn looked at the swirling vortex in the sky. Ash is with Giratina, Dawn said. Then he is our only hope, Cynthia said. You have to hold the line, Dawn. Keep the people safe. If Ash fails, he won't, Dawn said fiercely. He never fails. Suddenly, the ground shook. A fissure opened in the middle of the street. But it wasn't magma inside. It was purple void. From the fissure, tentacles of shadow erupted. Antibodies. Zoey yelled, jumping out of the ship with her rifle. They're crossing over. The shadows lashed out, grabbing a police car and crushing it. Defensive positions. Dawn screamed. Gym leaders, front and center. Defend the civilians. Gardenia, Rourke, Maylene, and Wake formed a wall. Torterra, frenzy plant. Rampardos, rock slide. Lucario, aura sphere. The battle for Sinnoh had begun. It wasn't a battle for a title. It was a battle for the right to exist. The Void Ash and Staraptor were flying for their lives. Behind them, Giratina was pursuing. The renegade Pokémon was flying with terrifying speed, phasing through floating rocks. It fired beams of dragon energy that disintegrated everything they touched. Vayne was screaming, clinging to Ash's waist. It's going to kill us. It's going to kill us. Shut up. Ash roared. You did this. I tried to control it. You tried to chain a hurricane. Ash looked back. Giratina was gaining. The red chain energy around its head was pulsing faster. It was in agony. It was lashing out at everything because everything hurt. I have to break the chain, Ash said to himself. He looked at Vayne. The controller. The remote. Give it to me. I dropped it on the pyramid. Vayne stammered. Useless. Ash spat. He looked at Giratina. The red chain manifested as a glowing halo of energy around its neck. I have to get close, Ash realized. Are you insane? Vayne shrieked. Staraptor. Ash yelled over the wind. Pull up. Loop around. We're attacking. Staraptor screeched a protest but obeyed. The bird pulled into a steep vertical climb, or what passed for vertical. Giratina roared, following them. Now. Brave bird. Staraptor enveloped itself in blue energy. It dove. Not away from Giratina. Toward it. Ash, no. Pikachu screamed. They plummeted toward the massive dragon face. Jump. Ash yelled. He leaped off Staraptor mid-dive. He fell through the void, straight toward Giratina's head. He landed on the dragon's snout. The impact nearly shattered his spine. He grabbed the golden armor plating, holding on for dear life as the god thrashed. Giratina. Ash screamed. The dragon's red eyes crossed to look at the human on its nose. It opened its mouth to blast him. Ash didn't attack. He reached out with his aura. He poured everything he had, his love for Pokémon, his sorrow, his will, into his hand. He slammed his hand onto Giratina's forehead. I know it hurts. Ash screamed telepathically. I know. Let me help you. The red chain flared. It fought back. It felt like acid burning Ash's mind. Vayne, floating nearby on his thrusters, watched in horror. He's connecting with it, Vayne whispered. Direct neural interface. Without tech. Impossible. Ash's skin began to crack, glowing blue. The feedback was killing him. Pikachu. Ash yelled. Iron Tail. Break the collar. Pikachu, who had jumped with Ash, was clinging to one of Giratina's spikes. He leaped. Chuopika. The iron tail slammed into the energy halo around Giratina's neck. Ash pushed with his aura. Pikachu struck with his body. Crack. The halo shattered. The red light in Giratina's eyes faded. The milky white pupils returned. The dragon stopped thrashing. It hovered in the void, confused, panting. Ash collapsed on the dragon's head, gasping for air. His hand was burned. His vision was swimming. Giratina let out a low, rumbling growl. It wasn't angry. It was acknowledging. Little one, the voice boomed in Ash's head. You are, heavy. Ash laughed, a weak, broken sound. Sorry. Giratina looked at the portal, the tear in the sky. The balance is broken. We must fix it. Yeah, Ash whispered. Let's go home. Giratina turned its massive body. It grabbed Vane, who was trying to float away stealthily, with a shadowy tendril. It didn't crush him. It just held him, like a specimen. Then, the god flew toward the crack in the sky. Eterna City, the shadows were winning. Dawn was backed into a corner, her Togekiss exhausted. Maylene was down, her Lucario standing over her, growling. The portal in the sky pulsed. It's getting bigger. Zoey yelled, firing her last magazine. Suddenly, a shape exploded from the portal. It wasn't a shadow. It was Giratina. The god of antimatter descended from the clouds, massive and terrifying. The fighting stopped. The shadows froze. Giratina roared, a sound that repaired reality. The shockwave of its voice slammed the shadows back into the portal. The gravity normalized instantly. Cars crashed to the ground. People fell over. And standing on Giratina's head, looking like a king returning from the underworld, was Ash Ketchum. He raised his fist. It's over. Ash yelled. The people of Sinnoh looked up. They saw the monster the media had warned them about. But he wasn't destroying the city. He was riding the devil to save them. Dawn dropped her baton. Tears finally spilled over. Show off, she whispered. Giratina landed in the town square, crushing the pavement. It lowered its head. Ash slid down. He stumbled, his legs giving out. Dawn and Zoey were there before he hit the ground. They caught him. Ash looked at them. He was battered, burned, and bleeding. Hey, Ash grinned, his teeth red. Did I miss anything? Dawn buried her face in his chest, sobbing. Zoey gripped his arm so hard it hurt, resting her forehead against his. Just the end of the world, Zoey choked out. Ash looked at Vane, who was deposited unceremoniously on the ground by Giratina, wrapped in shadow bindings. Secure him, Ash said, his eyes heavy. It's finally done. As the sirens wailed in the distance and the sun began to break through the dissolving purple clouds, Ash Ketchum let himself close his eyes. He was safe. He was home. Chapter 7 End. Chapter 8, The void stares back. The silence of the recovery room was artificial. It was the silence of soundproof glass, white noise generators, and the hum of high-end medical machinery designed to keep the world out. Ash Ketchum lay in the center of the room, staring at the ceiling. He wasn't sleeping. He didn't think he could sleep ever again. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the purple sky. He felt the crushing weight of gravity that pulled in the wrong direction. He heard the screams of a god in agony echoing in his bone marrow. He raised his right hand. It was wrapped in biogel bandages, but he could feel the skin underneath. It felt strange. Cold. Not the cold of ice, which burns and melts, but the cold of a vacuum. Stop checking, a voice said softly. Ash turned his head. Dawn was sitting in the armchair by the window. She had traded her ruined gala dress for a simple oversized hoodie and leggings. Her hair was loose, cascading over her shoulders, messy and unbrushed. She looked exhausted, but her eyes were alert, watching him with the intensity of a guard dog. I'm not checking, Ash rasped. His voice sounded like he'd swallowed broken glass. You are, Zoey said. She walked out of the ensuite bathroom, drying her face with a towel. She looked even worse than Dawn, bruises darkening her jawline, a bandage around her left wrist. You're flexing your fingers to see if the nerves still work. They do. The doctors said you're lucky you didn't shatter every metacarpal when you punched a god. I didn't punch a god, Ash corrected weakly. I high-fived it. With your soul, Dawn added, standing up and walking to the bedside. She perched on the edge of the mattress, careful not to jostle him. She reached out, her fingers ghosting over his bandaged hand before settling on his forearm. You stopped breathing, Ash. For 3 minutes. Do you know what that felt like for us? Ash looked at her. He saw the terror she was trying to hide behind a mask of annoyance. He looked at Zoey, who was leaning against the wall, arms crossed, staring at the floor to avoid making eye contact. I'm sorry, Ash said. Don't be sorry, Zoey snapped, her head snapping up. Be alive. That's the deal. She walked over, the anger draining out of her as quickly as it had come, replaced by a desperate need for contact. She stood on the other side of the bed, gripping the metal rail until her knuckles turned white. The world is going crazy outside, Zoey said quietly. The footage of you riding Giratina, it's everywhere. They're calling you the Avatar of Sin No. The Dragon Tamer. Some of the more religious cults are calling you a messiah. I'm just a trainer, Ash muttered, closing his eyes. Not anymore, Dawn whispered. She leaned down, resting her forehead against his shoulder. You bridged the gap between dimensions. You commanded the renegade. You aren't just a trainer, Ash. You're something else. Ash lay there, feeling the warmth of Dawn against his shoulder and the fierce presence of Zoey at his side. But beneath that warmth, deep in the pit of his stomach, the void swirled. He hadn't told them yet. He hadn't told them that when he touched Giratina, when he broke the red chain, something had looked back at him. The distortion world hadn't just spit him out. It had left a stain. He could feel it pulsing in his veins, a syncopated rhythm to his own heartbeat. A desire for silence. A hunger for shadows. Where is Vane? Ash asked, opening his eyes. Secure wing, Zoey said. The international police took over. Looker is here. They have him under psychic suppression. Alakazams in every corner of the cell block. I need to talk to him, Ash said, trying to sit up. Pain shot through his spine, sharp and electric. He gasped, falling back. No, Dawn said firmly, placing a hand on his chest. You need to heal. Your aura reserves are critically low. If you push it now, you could burn out permanently. He knows something, Ash insisted, fighting the dizziness. The way he looked at me before Giratina took him, he wasn't defeated. He was satisfied. He's a lunatic, Zoey dismissed. He tried to delete reality. He's a strategist, Ash corrected. And the Aegis isn't gone. We cut off the head, but the body is still twitching. I need to know where the nerves are. Ash looked at Dawn. He used the bond, the silent, unspoken current that ran between the three of them now. He poured his urgency into it. Dawn sighed, closing her eyes. She felt it. She felt his need, not for vengeance, but for closure. For safety. 1 hour, Dawn said, standing up. We get you a wheelchair. Zoey sweeps the perimeter. But if you look like you're going to pass out, I am dragging you back here by your ear. Ash managed a weak grin. Deal. The secure wing of the Eterna Medical Center was a fortress. The Aegis coup had failed, but the loyalty of the local police was still in question. As a result, the League had imported security. Ace trainers from Unova and rangers from Alola patrolled the halls. Ash sat in the wheelchair, Dawn pushing him. He wore a gray tracksuit, a stark contrast to the battle-ravaged gear he had worn for the last week. Zoey walked point, her hand never straying far from the holster concealed under her jacket. They reached the holding cell. 2 Alakazams stood guard, their spoons glowing with a faint psychic barrier. Champion, the guard, a stony-faced international police officer, nodded. He's awake. But he's not talking. He'll talk to me, Ash said. The heavy steel door slid open with a pneumatic hiss. Inside, the room was stark white. Silas Vane sat at a metal table, handcuffed to the surface. He wore an orange jumpsuit. His glasses were gone, leaving him looking older, smaller. But when he looked up, his eyes were sharp. The monarch, Vane smiled. I heard you survived. A pity. Reality would have been so much quieter without you. Dawn wheeled Ash up to the table. She stood behind him, her hand on his shoulder. Zoey leaned against the door, locking it from the inside. It's over, Vane, Ash said. His voice was stronger now, fueled by the proximity to the enemy. The dampeners are destroyed. The red chain is broken. Giratina is back in the distortion world. Is it? Vane asked softly. He leaned forward, the chains rattling. Giratina is a force of nature, Ash. You don't put a force of nature back in a box once you've touched it. You carry it with you. Vane's eyes dropped to Ash's bandaged hand. I saw the connection, Vane whispered. No technology. No poke balls. You merged with it. You became the conduit for antimatter. I saved the world, Ash said. You contaminated it, Vane countered, his voice rising with a fanatical edge. Don't you feel it? The cold? The shadows watching you? You think you're human. You're a biological impossibility. You are exactly what the Aegis was created to destroy. Who else? Ash demanded. Who else is in the network? You didn't build the Titans alone. You didn't orchestrate a global blackout with a mining permit. Vane laughed. It was a dry, rasping sound. You think I'm the architect? I'm just the project manager, boy. The Aegis isn't a group. It's an immune response. Humanity is sick of living in fear of monsters. We are the white blood cells. He looked at Zoey, then at Dawn. You've surrounded yourself with handlers, Vane sneered. Smart. But they can't protect you from what's coming. The Enforcer is already active. The Enforcer? Zoey stepped forward. Who is that? Vane leaned back, a look of genuine pity crossing his face. You fought the grunts. You fought the prototypes. But you haven't fought the masterpiece. He doesn't use Pokemon, Ash. He is the Pokemon. Vane closed his eyes. He's coming for you. And unlike me, he doesn't want to rewrite the world. He just wants to kill the God King. Suddenly, the lights in the cell flickered. Ash felt it. A spike of pressure. Not aura. Not psychic energy. Something cold. Something familiar. Get down. Ash yelled. Boom. The wall behind Vane exploded. It wasn't a bomb. It was a physical impact so powerful it turned reinforced concrete into dust. Ash was thrown from his wheelchair. Dawn scrambled to cover him. Zoey drew her weapon, firing blindly into the dust cloud. Through the hole in the wall, the night air rushed in. And stepping through the breach was a figure. He was massive, nearly 7 feet tall. He wore heavy, matte black armor that looked fused to his body. But it was his arms that drew the eye. They weren't human. They were massive, metallic, and hummed with the same violet energy the assassin in the locker room had used, but magnified 1,000 times. Target confirmed, the figure's voice was a deep, synthesized rumble. Vane, the figure barked. Extraction. Vane stood up, laughing maniacally. Right on time, Kale. Zoey, stop him. Ash roared, trying to push himself up. His legs wobbled. Zoey didn't hesitate. She pistol-whipped the air, signaling her Pokemon. Mismagius. Psybeam. Her Mismagius materialized, firing a beam of multicolored light at the armored giant, Kale. Kale didn't dodge. He raised his left arm. The metal plating shifted, forming a reflective shield. The psybeam hit it and dissipated instantly. Magic coat, Ash realized with horror. He has moved data integrated into the suit. Kale raised his right arm. A piston hissed. Bullet punch. He moved faster than a human should be able to move. A blur of steel. He slammed his fist into Miss Magius. The ghost type screamed, flying backward into the wall and sliding down, unconscious. One hit. Dawn, get Ash out of here. Zoey screamed, dropping her gun and pulling 2 more pokeballs. Galade. Glamo. Buy us time. No. Ash yelled. He'll kill you. Dawn grabbed Ash under the arms, hauling him up. We have to go. You can't fight. I won't leave her. Ash. Dawn slapped him. Hard. Her eyes were filled with tears. Trust her. Move. She dragged him out of the cell door just as Kale charged Galade. The hallway was chaos. The Alakazam guards were down, knocked out before they could even react. The alarms were blaring. We need to get to the roof, Dawn panted, supporting Ash's weight. Evac point. He's taking Vayne, Ash gasped, his legs dragging. If they escape. If you die, it doesn't matter. Dawn shouted. They reached the elevator. Dawn slammed the button. Behind them, down the hall, there was a sickening crunch, then the sound of Galade crying out. Zoey. Ash whispered. The elevator doors opened. They stumbled inside. Dawn hit the roof button. As the doors closed, Ash saw Kale step into the hallway. He was holding Vayne by the waist with one arm. With the other, he backhanded Zoey across the room. She hit the floor and didn't move. The doors shut. No. Ash hammered his fist against the steel. The pain in his hand was blinding, but it was nothing compared to the rage exploding in his chest. She's alive, Dawn sobbed, checking a biometric scanner on her wrist, the triad link they had set up. Her vitals are dropping, but she's alive. We have to get you safe, then we go back. I'm not running, Ash said. He stopped hammering. He stood up straight, leaning against the wall of the rising elevator. His eyes were closed. He was breathing deeply, inhaling the sterile air. Ash? Dawn asked, terrified by the sudden shift in his demeanor. Ash opened his eyes. The brown was gone. The blue was gone. His eyes were purple. The pupils were slits. I'm done running, Ash said. His voice echoed, layered with a low, draconic growl. The elevator dinged. Roof level. The doors opened to the helipad. Rain was lashing down. Standing in the center of the rain, waiting for a black dropship that hovered silently above, was Kale. He had beaten the elevator. He must have climbed the exterior wall. He dropped Vayne near the ship's ramp. He turned to face Ash and Dawn. Persistent, Kale rumbled. The monarch dies here. Dawn stepped in front of Ash, her hand on her belt. Piplup. Togekiss. Kalava. Her team materialized, forming a defensive line. Kale cracked his knuckles. The sound was like metal shearing. Biologicals. Obsolete. He charged. Flamethrower. Hydro pump. Aura sphere. Dawn commanded. The attacks merged into a wall of destruction. Kale didn't slow down. A barrier of green energy flared around his armor. Protect, Ash analyzed instantly. Kale smashed through the smoke. He swatted Kalava aside like a ragdoll. He caught Togekiss by the wing and slammed her into the concrete. Piplup tried to peck his leg, Kale kicked the small penguin 20 feet away. Dawn screamed. She was defenseless. Kale raised his fist, the violet energy charging for a killing blow on Dawn. Dawn! Ash moved. He didn't have his speed. He didn't have his strength. But he had the void. Ash stepped between Kale and Dawn. He didn't raise his hands to block. He raised his hand to take. Shadow. Force, Ash whispered. The shadows on the roof, the shadows of the helicopter, the ventilation units, the rain itself, detached themselves from the ground. They surged forward, solidifying into tentacles of pure darkness. Kale paused, his sensors going haywire. Unknown energy signature. The shadows wrapped around Kale's arm. They burned through the armor. What is this? Vane screamed from the ramp. That's Giratina's move. Ash stood there, his hand outstretched. The bandages on his arm disintegrated. His skin was black, translucent, revealing veins that glowed with starlight. Get away from her, Ash said. The voice wasn't his. It was the voice of the distortion world. Ash clenched his fist. The shadows constricted. Kale's armor crumpled. The titanium alloy buckled like tin foil. The cyborg roared in pain, not mechanical feedback, but human pain. System critical, Kale gasped. Armor integrity, failing. Ash, stop. Dawn grabbed his other arm. You're killing him. Ash looked at her. The purple in his eyes swirled. He looked at Kale, who was being crushed. He looked at Vane, who was terrified. The rage wanted to squeeze. The rage wanted to silence the threat permanently. But Dawn's hand was warm. It was real. Ash gasped, the connection breaking. The shadows evaporated into mist. Ash fell to his knees, coughing up dark bile. The purple faded from his eyes, leaving them bloodshot and brown. Kale fell to the ground, his right arm a twisted wreck of sparks and metal. Extract. Kale yelled to the ship. A tractor beam shot down from the dropship, grabbing Kale and Vane. Lucario. Ash wheezed, grabbing his belt. Don't let them leave. He threw the ball. Lucario burst out. He saw the beam. He saw Ash on his knees. Lucario gathered an aura sphere. It was massive, swirling with blue and, yes, a trace of purple. He fired. The sphere hit the dropship's engine. Boom. The ship spun wildly, smoke pouring from the turbine. But it didn't crash. The pilot managed to stabilize it, banking hard into the storm clouds. They were gone. Ash stared at the empty sky. The rain washed the black bile from his lips. Dawn fell to her knees beside him, pulling him into a hug. She was shaking uncontrollably. What did you do? She whispered. That wasn't aura. Ash looked at his hand. The skin was normal again, but it felt numb. The void stares back, Ash whispered. Vane was right. The door to the roof stairs burst open. Zoey stumbled out. She was limping, holding her ribs, blood running down her forehead. But she was alive. Ash. Dawn, she screamed. Dawn sobbed with relief, waving her over. We're here. We're okay. Zoey collapsed beside them, completing the circle. They huddled together in the rain, battered, broken, and terrified. They got away, Ash said, his voice hollow. And they know what I am now. What you are? Zoey asked, wiping blood from her eyes. You're the guy who just scared off a walking tank. I used Shadow Force, Zoey, Ash said, looking at her. I used a Pokemon move. A legendary move. Without a Pokemon. Silence settled over the roof, heavy and cold. It's the residue, Dawn said, gripping his hand tight. From the bond. It'll fade. Will it? Ash asked. He looked at the city below. Eterna was safe, but the shadows in the alleyways seemed deeper, darker. They seemed to be waving at him. We have to go, Zoey said, struggling to stand. Looker is securing the building, but this place isn't safe. If Kale can breach it, anyone can. Where do we go? Dawn asked. Pallet. Sunnyshoire. No, Ash stood up. He felt drained, but the strange, cold energy was still humming in the back of his mind, keeping him upright. We go to the one place they can't track us. The one place where the wild Pokemon are strong enough to eat cyborgs. Empty Silver? Zoey guessed. No, Ash said. The Tree of Beginning. Dawn's eyes widened. Lucario's home. The place where aura originates, Ash said. If I'm changing, if I'm becoming something else, I need to know how to control it. And the Mew living there owes me a favor. Ash looked at his partners. We disappear, Ash said. Tonight. We go underground. We train. And when we come back. He looked at his twisted reflection in a puddle. We hunt them down. The aftermath, unknown location inside the dropship, Kale sat in the medical bay, sparks flying from his crushed arm. Technicians were frantically trying to stabilize the power core. Vane sat opposite him, looking at the data stream on a monitor. Did you see the readings? Vane asked, his voice trembling with excitement. When he used the shadows. He crushed type for titanium alloy with telekinesis, Kale grunted, wincing as a welder touched his shoulder. He is a biological weapon. He is the bridge, Vane corrected. He accessed the distortion world's energy signatures at will. He is the ultimate hybrid. Vane stood up, walking to the window, watching the storm pass. We don't need to kill him, Kale. We need to harvest him. Vane smiled. Initiate Phase 3. Call the Pantheon. Tell them the monarch has ascended. And tell them, we're going to steal his crown. The road to Rhoda. Ash, Dawn, and Zoey sat in the back of a nondescript cargo van, driven by a contact of Zoey's. They were heading for the Kanto ferry. Ash was asleep, finally. His head rested on Dawn's lap. Dawn was running her fingers through his hair. Zoey was cleaning her gun, watching the road behind them. He's different, Zoey said quietly. I know, Dawn whispered. He scared me up there, Zoey admitted. For a second, he didn't look like Ash. Dawn looked down at Ash's sleeping face. He looked peaceful, but his hand, the one that had summoned the shadows, was twitching. He's still Ash, Dawn said fiercely. He's just, carrying more weight. Can we carry it with him? Zoey asked. That kind of darkness, it eats people, Dawn. Dawn leaned down and kissed Ash's forehead. Then we let it eat us too, Dawn said. We're a triad. If he goes into the dark, we bring the light. Or we bring a flashlight and a gun. Zoey smirked, the tension breaking slightly. I prefer the gun. She reached over and squeezed Dawn's hand. To the Tree of Beginning, Zoey said. To the end of the line, Dawn replied. The van sped into the night, leaving Sinnoh behind. The monarch was in exile. But the war was far from over. Chapter 8 End. Chapter 9, The Siege of the Beginning. The Tree of Beginning did not look like a tree. Not from the ground. It looked like a mountain that had dreamed of becoming a crystal, a jagged, impossible spire of rock and fossilized wood that pierced the clouds of the Rhoda region. The cargo van rattled over the dirt road, kicking up dust that glowed orange in the setting sun. It's bigger than I remember, Ash murmured from the passenger seat. He was staring out the window, his eyes tracing the familiar crystalline formations. You've been here before? Zoey asked from the back, checking the load on her pistol for the 10th time. Once, Ash said. He rubbed his chest, where the phantom pain of an old sacrifice still lingered. A long time ago. I died here. Dawn, driving the van, flinched. The steering wheel creaked under her grip. Let's try to avoid a repeat performance, okay? No promises, Ash said softly. They drove past the abandoned town of Rhoda, crossing the bridge that led to the valley. The air changed here. It became thick, charged with a static electricity that made the hair on their arms stand up. It was the density of the aura. As they approached the base of the massive structure, the ground rumbled. 3 massive shapes emerged from the rock face. Zzzzzzzzz. Regi Rock. Regice. Registeel. The guardians of the tree blocked the path, their eyes flashing a warning pattern of red dots. Stop the van, Ash ordered. Dawn slammed the brakes. Ash opened the door and stepped out. He didn't raise his hands. He didn't summon a Pokemon. He walked toward the Titans. I am Ash Ketchum, he projected his voice, layering it with the aura. I am a guardian of the aura. I seek sanctuary. The Titans paused. The red lights blinked rapidly. They scanned him, not his body, but his soul. Then, Regirock stepped aside. Regice lowered its arms. Registeel bowed, a metallic screech that echoed through the valley. They remember you, Zoey whispered, stepping out of the van behind him. The tree remembers everything, Ash said. Suddenly, a small pink blur shot out from the crystalline canopy high above. It moved with playful, chaotic speed, doing loops around Registeel's head before diving straight at Ash. Mew. The mythical Pokemon slammed into Ash's chest, nuzzling into his neck, making small, delighted squeaks. Ash caught Mew, a genuine smile breaking through the grim mask he had worn since Eterna. Hey, buddy. Yeah, it's been a while. Mew floated back, looking at Ash with large, innocent blue eyes. Then, the Pokemon paused. It tilted its head. It sniffed Ash. Mew's expression changed from joy to confusion, then to fear. It hissed, backing away, its tail twitching. It sensed the void. It sensed the shadow of Giratina clinging to Ash's aura. I know, Ash said, holding out his hand. The shadow force pulsed under his skin, a faint purple vein amidst the blue. I'm sick, Mew. I need the tree to help me fix it. Mew looked at him, then at Dawn and Zoey. It let out a soft, sad coo, then turned and flew toward the entrance tunnel. Follow. The heart of the crystal, the interior of the tree, was a biological cathedral. Veins of glowing blue liquid pumped through the translucent walls. It was a living organism the size of a city. They set up camp in the central atrium, near the massive antibody clusters that functioned as the tree's immune system. So this is where aura comes from? Dawn asked, running her hand along a glowing wall. It's a nexus, Ash said. He was sitting cross-legged on the floor, shirtless. The scars on his body were stark under the blue light, burns from Charizard, cuts from the Aegis, and the strange, dark discoloration on his right arm from the shadow force. It connects every living thing. And how does it fix you? Zoey asked, setting up a perimeter of motion sensors. I have to balance it, Ash said. The shadow force is antimatter. Aura is matter. If I can't integrate them, the antimatter will eat my nervous system. I'll become hollow. He closed his eyes. I need to meditate. Lucario is going to help guide the flow. Ash released Lucario. The jackal Pokemon sat opposite him. They touched foreheads. Blue light flared. But immediately, purple sparks arced, fighting the blue. Ash gritted his teeth, sweat beading on his forehead. Dawn and Zoey sat nearby, watching. He's fighting a war inside his own body, Dawn whispered. He's winning, Zoey said, though she didn't sound convinced. She looked at her datapad. I'm monitoring the global frequencies. The Aegis has gone silent. No chatter. No movement. That's bad, Dawn said. Vayne loves the sound of his own voice. If he's quiet, he's aiming. 12 hours later the attack didn't start with an explosion. It started with a shadow. It was midday, but the light filtering through the crystal ceiling dimmed. Zoey's sensors screamed. Contact. Zoey yelled, kicking the sleeping bag off her legs. Massive heat signatures. 12 o'clock. High altitude. Ash snapped out of his trance. His eyes were wide. The purple tint was still there, but controlled. They're here, Ash said. Boom. The ceiling of the atrium, hundreds of feet up, shattered. Debris rained down like diamond hail. Through the breach, drop pods descended. They were sleek, black, and shaped like coffins. They slammed into the floor of the atrium, cracking the crystal. 1. 5. 10. 20. Steam hissed as the pods opened. Soldiers stepped out. But these weren't the mercenaries from the warehouse. These were different. They wore armor that shifted colors, adapting to the light, active camouflage. They carried weapons that didn't look like guns, but like tuning forks, resonance cannons. The Pantheon, Ash breathed. Vayne's elite. At the center of the formation, a larger pod opened. Director Vayne stepped out. He was flanked by Kale, whose arm had been replaced with a massive, clawed prosthetic made of pure energy. Sanctuary is a myth, Ash, Vayne's voice amplified through the cavern. There is nowhere on Earth you can hide from the future. Mew. Ash yelled. Protect the core. Mew screeched, diving into the lower levels to activate the tree's defenses. Regis. Defend. From the shadows, the three titans charged. Regirox smashed into the nearest Pantheon soldier. The soldier didn't flinch. He raised his resonance cannon and fired a pulse of gray sound. Crack. Regirox's arm, solid stone, shattered into dust. Sonic cannons, Zoey realized, horror-struck. They're using frequency weapons to shatter the crystal structure. They're here to kill the tree. Engage. Ash roared. The battle for the beginning began. It was chaos. The Pantheon soldiers were efficient, silent killers. They moved in perfect synchronization. Pikachu, Thunderbolt. Ash commanded. Lucario, Aura Sphere. The attacks flew. But the Pantheon armor absorbed the energy. Their type nullified, Dawn shouted, dodging a sonic blast that vaporized the rock next to her head. They have dampeners built into the suits. Physical trauma only. Ash yelled. Zoey, Dawn, flank them. Use the environment. Zoey slid under a sonic blast, coming up with her pistol. She fired at the visor of a soldier. The glass cracked. The soldier stumbled. Leaf blade. Zoey released her Galade. Aim for the joints. Galade moved like a green blur, slicing through the hydraulic lines of the soldier's leg. The soldier collapsed. But there were too many of them. Kale walked through the battlefield, ignoring the chaos. He walked straight toward Ash. Rematch, Kale rumbled. Ash stood his ground. He didn't have shadows to call on here, the tree's light was too strong. He had to fight with Aura. Lucario, sync with me. Ash and Lucario moved as one. They rushed Kale. Kale swung his energy claw. Ash ducked, sliding between Kale's legs. Lucario jumped over Kale's head, firing a point-blank force palm into the cyborg's back. Kale stumbled forward. Ash came up, delivering an uppercut infused with aura. Clang. Kale laughed. Predictable. He spun, his arm extending like a piston. He backhanded Ash. Ash flew 50 feet, smashing into a crystal pillar. He fell, coughing blood. Ash! Dawn screamed. Eyes on the target. Vane ordered his troops. Deploy the drill. A massive machine dropped through the hole in the ceiling. It looked like a tick, a fat, metal body with 4 legs and a massive, spinning laser drill on the bottom. It landed in the center of the room, directly over the central vein of the tree. No, Ash gasped, struggling to stand. Initiate extraction, Vane commanded. The drill spun up. It fired a beam of red light into the floor. The tree screamed. It wasn't a sound. It was a psychic shockwave. Every Pokémon in the room flinched. The crystals turned from blue to a sickly gray. He's sucking the life out of it, Ash realized. He's harvesting the aura network. If the tree died, the connection between all Pokémon and nature would be severed. It would be the red chain on a global scale. We have to stop that drill. Zoey yelled. I can't get close. Dawn cried. Her Togekiss was pinned down by suppressive fire from 3 Pantheon soldiers. Ash looked at the drill. He looked at Kale blocking his path. He looked at his friends fighting a losing battle. He felt the void inside him. It was hungry. It wanted to consume the threat. But the tree was light. If he unleashed the shadow force here, in the heart of the aura, the reaction would destroy everything. Balance, a voice whispered. Ash looked up. Mew was floating above him, looking sad and determined. Mew flew down. It didn't attack Kale. It flew into Ash. Ash gasped. It wasn't a possession. It was a donation. Mew, the ancestor of all Pokémon, was lending its genetic adaptability to the human who defended it. The purple vein in Ash's arm glowed. The blue aura in his chest flared. They met in the middle. They didn't explode. They swirled. A double helix of light and dark. Ash stood up. His eyes weren't purple. They weren't blue. They were silver. Kale, Ash said. His voice was a chorus, human, Pokémon, void. Kale turned. Target power levels rising. Illogical. Ash raised his hand. Aura storm, Ash whispered. He didn't fire a beam. He clapped his hands together. A shockwave of silver energy exploded outward. It hit Kale. The cyborg didn't just fly back, his armor disintegrated. Layer by layer, stripped away by the sheer pressure of the energy. Kale hit the far wall as a sparking wreck of man and machine. The shockwave hit the Pantheon soldiers. It didn't kill them. It overloaded their dampener suits. The suits froze, locking the soldiers in place like statues. Ash walked toward the drill. Vane was standing on top of the machine, looking down at Ash with a mix of terror and awe. Beautiful, Vane whispered. You are the apex. Get off my tree, Ash said. He jumped. He soared through the air, landing on the drill platform. Vane pulled a pistol. He fired. Ash caught the bullet. He didn't use telekinesis. He caught it with his fingers. He dropped the flattened lead on the metal deck. You lose, Vane. Ash placed his palm on the drill's casing. Break. He pulsed the silver energy. The machine groaned. The laser flickered and died. The metal casing cracked, then shattered into 1,000 pieces. Vane fell, scrambling away across the debris. The tree, sensing the threat was gone, began to pulse blue again. The gray receded. Ash stood amidst the wreckage. The silver light in his eyes faded, leaving him swaying, exhausted, back to brown. Mew separated from him, floating dizzily in the air. Ash. Dawn ran to him, tackling him into a hug. Zoey was right behind her, checking him for wounds. Did we win? Ash mumbled, leaning heavily on them. We won the battle, Zoey said, looking at the frozen Pantheon soldiers and the wrecked Kale. But Dawn was looking at Vayne. The director had crawled to the edge of the atrium. He was holding a communication device. Phase 3, failed, Vayne whispered into the mic. Initiate. The scorched earth. What? Zoey snapped her head around. The ground shook. Not the tree. The earth outside. Zoey, scanners. Ash ordered, adrenaline waking him up. Zoey looked at her data pad. Her face went pale. Oh God. What is it? Dawn asked. Multiple signatures, Zoey whispered. Coming from the sky. They aren't ships. They're missiles. Missiles? Ash asked. Vayne called in an airstrike, Zoey yelled. He's going to nuke the tree. He's going to bury the evidence. We have to leave. Dawn screamed. We can't, Ash said. If the tree dies. If we stay, we die. Zoey grabbed his arm. Ash, there are 20 cruise missiles inbound. Impact in 3 minutes. Ash looked at the tree. He looked at Mew. He looked at the Regis, who were battered but standing. The tree can defend itself, Ash said. Regis. Light screen. Reflect. Full power. The 3 titans moved to the center of the atrium. They raised their arms. A massive, prismatic barrier began to form over the tree. It won't be enough, Ash said. I have to help them. No. Dawn cried. You're tapped out. I have one more left in me, Ash said. He looked at Vayne, who was laughing softly, accepting his own death. Ash grabbed Vayne by the collar. You're coming with us, Ash growled. To hell. Vayne smiled. To prison. Ash threw Vayne toward Zoey. Get him to the van. Get out of the blast zone. Ash, what are you going to do? Dawn asked, panic rising in her voice. Ash walked to the center of the room, standing between the Regis. I'm going to catch them. You're crazy. Zoey yelled, dragging Vayne. Go. Ash roared. Dawn looked at him one last time. She saw the set of his jaw. The decision was made. We'll be waiting, Dawn sobbed. She turned and ran. Ash stood alone with the Titans and Mew. He looked up through the hole in the ceiling. He could see the contrails. 20 streaks of fire falling from the heavens. Ash closed his eyes. He reached out. Not to the void. Not to Mew. To everyone. Pikachu. Charizard. Lucario. Sceptile. Greninja. Infernape. He felt them. All of them. In their balls on his belt. Lend me your strength. The poke balls glowed. Energy streamed out of them, flowing into Ash. Fire, water, grass, electricity. Ash glowed like a sun. The missiles hit the barrier. Boom boom boom. The world turned white. The sound was the end of everything. The barrier cracked. Ash screamed. He pushed his hands up, holding the sky. The heat was unbearable. The pressure was crushing. But he held it. For 10 seconds. 20. The missiles detonated, their kinetic energy spent against the wall of aura Ash had created. The explosion ceased. Smoke filled the valley. The rubble. Dawn and Zoey crawled out from under the van, which had been blown onto its side by the shockwave near the valley entrance. Ash? Dawn whispered. They ran back toward the tree. The top of the tree was sheared off. The crystal was blackened. But it was standing. They rushed into the atrium. It was silent. Ash was lying in the center of the room. The Regis were statues, deactivated, their energy spent. Mew was curled on Ash's chest, shivering. Ash wasn't moving. No, Dawn choked. She fell beside him. His skin was gray. His breath was shallow, almost non-existent. He burned out, Zoey said, checking his pulse. His heart is barely beating. He used raw life force. We have to get him to a hospital, Dawn said, crying. No hospital can fix this, Vane's voice came from the entrance. He was handcuffed to the van door, but he had dragged it with him. He looked at Ash with a strange respect. He drained his own battery. He's empty. Shut up. Zoey yelled. Dawn placed her hands on Ash's chest. Wake up. Please, wake up. You promised. Nothing. Then, the tree hummed. A drop of blue liquid fell from a cracked crystal above. It landed on Ash's cheek. Then another. The tree was weeping. The liquid glowed. It seeped into Ash's skin. The antibodies, the little gelatinous blobs that lived in the tree, emerged from the floor. They didn't attack. They swarmed over Ash. They're eating him. Zoey gasped, raising her gun. No, Dawn said, watching closely. They're healing him. The antibodies dissolved into pure light, merging with Ash's body. The gray skin turned pink. The breathing deepened. Ash gasped, his eyes snapping open. He sat up, inhaling a massive breath of air. He looked around. He saw Dawn. He saw the tree. Did I catch them? Ash asked. Dawn laughed, a hysterical, wet sound. She threw her arms around him. You caught them, you idiot. You caught them. Ash looked at his hands. They were glowing faintly. I think. Ash whispered. I think the tree just claimed me. What does that mean? Zoey asked. Ash looked at the entrance, where the sun was setting over the ruined landscape. It means I'm not just the champion of Sinnoh anymore, Ash said. I'm the guardian. He stood up. He felt stronger than he ever had. The void was gone, washed away by the tree's sacrifice. He looked at Vane. The war is over, Vane. Vane shook his head slowly. The battle is over, Monarch. But you just showed the world that a human can stop a nuke with his bare hands. Do you think they will let you live in peace? Let them come, Ash said. He walked out of the tree, Dawn and Zoey at his side. He looked at the horizon. We have a region to rebuild. Chapter 9 End.